Hello and welcome to Week 13 of the Base on Balls podcast here on the Johnny Lee Memorial League. I'm Hendog, joined alongside Jon Heite, Conner, and Tita for tonight's episode. Sunday Night Baseball just about wrapping up, but very surprising week. Nothing really that close, a lot of blowouts. But before we get into tonight's episode, guys, how are you doing? How's your week? 4th of July coming up in a couple of days. Got any plans? How you guys doing?
I'm doing good, man. Ready to rumble. Just got a perfect game shoved up my nose this week, so I'm ready. I'm ready for a new week of baseball and a little barbecue on the 4th of July, so let's celebrate America.
I'm doing great as well, Hen. I'm very excited for this past week for myself. I broke I think the single-week record for this season that I previously had. Finally hit the 1,000-point mark. Like Tita said, I'm excited for July 4th. Some hot dogs, some burgers, some barbecue. I'm very excited for Tuesday.
I can't say my team has too much to be excited for since Heite's offense outscored my entire team, but I think there's a lot to look forward to in the future, both for the upcoming food for the 4th of July and for how the sod poodles are looking in the years to come.
Yeah, obviously extended weekend, so to say. I'm obviously excited about it. Get some time off, hang out, get some nice food, all that good stuff. But let's get into last week's matchups. So we'll start with, I believe, what was the game of the week. The Rocky Mountain Vibes against the Clearwater Beach Dogs. Myself, my team took down Bry's 8-19 to 6-35. Since this is my game, I'll kind of start things off. Obviously, I think now my team's really starting to get to a point where it's clicking on all cylinders. 800. If you're scoring 800 points, you're going to win most weeks unless you're facing Jon Heite or Domingo Herman. But, it is what it is. But obviously, I was scared a bit about Bry. His streaming. He's always lurking, trying to get a couple of points here. But I was able to really build a comfortable margin, I want to say around Thursday. And I kind of took off from there. I will say, and I was kind of saying this before the call, my pitching, I got a good amount of points for my pitching, actually. 389, almost 400, which is good enough. But this past week, I was just struggling to get, to find the right relief pitcher to play. I would play, David Robertson one day, and he gave me 2, and I would bench David Bednar, who would get, 15, because I thought their pitch count was they pitched too many the day before, or their matchup wasn't going to be a viable position for a save. So, I don't know. I added David Robertson, which I'll talk about, but that is something that, in a closer matchup could bite me in the ass if I give up, 40 or 50 points on the bench because I play the wrong relievers. That is something to kind of look out for. I'll get the exact total right now, but hold on. So, 15, 33, 45, and then, I kind of left, 40 to 50 points on the bench because I played the wrong reliever one day. It happens, but in a closer match, that can swing the difference between a win or a loss, so I got to manage that better. Also, Corbin Carroll is injured right now. He has not played since, I believe, he actually did play today, so he came back today, but he had not played from June 29th. So I guess he is back now. I thought he had not played, but I guess I just missed that. So that's good. At least he's back, but he was out for a couple of days. Still got some great production with the bats, including one Tommy Pham who, I didn't even play him the full week, and he still had 36 points and 14 at-bats. But Beach Dogs are rolling. Good performance. Bry, actually, I kind of just looked at this now. 448 points from his bats. A lot. Just couldn't get it done with the arms, but I'll let you guys finish. I don't want to ramble on too much. I'll give you guys the floor now.
I just thought, man, it was surprising to me. Well, it wasn't surprising, but just how bad that this one ended up turning out. I thought it'd be a little bit closer, but, I'm not going to go long-winded. I think Hen is establishing himself as a legit top 2 to 3 team at worst in our league. And this kind of shows back-to-back butt kickings. Me last week, Bride this week. The Beach Dogs have hit their stride. And I think Bride, my only advice would be to maybe consolidate some of the specs, or, he's got enough pieces. His pitching's fine. I worry about his bats a little bit. I think he could, maybe consolidate some of those pitchers and help his bats out. But nothing would have helped this week unless he had Domingo Germán. And so, it kind of played out how I thought it would. Like I said, the Beach Dogs are on fire, and I wouldn't want to play them right now.
Yeah, I said last week before this matchup was coming up that there's absolutely no reason to bet against Hen right now. And I think even after this week, it's further shown not only that, but, you got to ride out the Beach Dogs' current run as long as possible because, it's scary enough. You mentioned Corbin Carroll, who actually wasn't even in the lineup today. He had one at-bat, so he hasn't really been in the lineup for a great deal of time. But without Jordan Alvarez, who we even forgot to talk about, but just guys like Kyle Tucker starting around at the form with 63, Juan Soto at 40, J. Ram had 55, Lane Thomas, the freaking waiver wire edition play of the year, who I think, he's the 26th overall bat right now in our league. We'll talk about your trades in a little bit to get Strider, but your ace right now, Andrew Abbott, 85-point week. He had 46 against the Padres, 39 against the Orioles. What a great find there. The pitching looks great. Funny enough, for Bry, he actually outscored Hen's bats 448 to 430, but I agree with Tita's point that, and I think he's trying to do it, where he's trying to consolidate, 2 or 3 of the arms, maybe the bats, just get some superstars, which, you see a lot of contending teams starting to do. Really load up on just, pure aces and pure just elite superstars instead of just, maybe just normal stars or just good players. And, I've gotten some calls from Bry about it. I'm sure some other teams have as well. But yeah, the pitching just wasn't there this week. He only had 187. I think it was really hurting him. Christian Javier had -7. I know that's probably his ace or, top 2 or 3 ace on the team. Just hasn't been there so far. He had a good start at Justin Steele, which is good. Julio Urias didn't have a good start as well. He just came back from injury recently. So Bry will figure it out. He'll be fine. And again, he's probably got the most assets probably outside of Hen in terms of, prospect capital and all that to really make a move if he wanted to really, overpay for a superstar maybe on the older side. So I think Bry's going to be fine. I think just caught a super hot team that, like we said, easily top 2 to 3 right now in the league. And yeah, the Beach Dogs are rolling and don't see them stopping anytime soon.
John and Tita covered it really well. Bry did have a little bit of a skid and beat me a couple weeks ago to get back on track. 630 points at the time of this recording is nothing to laugh at. But I think the consolidation will be key. Some of its stars, Joe Ryan, Christian Javier, just did not have the best start. So just trying to get out of the streaming and the risk from that and maybe getting some bigger pieces for teams that are looking to move assets are huge. And then, of course, Hendog, 389 points from the pitching. Of course, when facing a Heite or a Cody, their points on the bench is rough, but just in a regular season match, this is just clearly showing that this is a top team that is going to make a deep run in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'll say, sorry, I'll get 1 or 2 more quick points out, but like you said, Jon Heite, Andrew Abbott, absolute dog. I mean, it's crazy to think about. I was very close to trading him away in that Grayson Rodriguez deal. Obviously, Taj Bradley still has a lot of potential and upside, but right now, at least for the immediate future, Andrew Abbott has been absolutely rolling. 13 and a half, 2/3 innings pitched, 20 Ks, 85 points. Excellent from the southpaw. And then I want to get some receipts out for this one because I remember on the previous episode, Paul criticized me for playing Ezekiel Duran over Jordan Walker, who I did eventually trade, but Ezekiel Duran did have a 47-point week with 3 home runs. Just had to put that out there. And then, pitching, like you guys said, was great. I had 8 quality starts among my 12 starting pitchers. Really can't ask much better than that. But going to the next game, the El Paso Chihuahuas take down the Nashville Sounds 946 to 733. Tita, I know you have a lot to say about this, So I'll let you talk first. You can have the floor.
Yeah, I'm going to spend the next hour and a half kind of just dissecting this matchup, and we'll get to trades about 12:30 Eastern time. Now, man, I felt good about the week. I thought Smell was coming in. Hadn't scored. I think 500 points was his max the last couple of weeks. five something. I was up, felt pretty good. I had a lot of starts later in the week. So I felt good. I was up 75-80 going in. I want to say it was it Wednesday night? I want to say it was Wednesday when Domingo Herman crushed my hopes and dreams, the snatcher of souls, the eater of worlds. He just, I took a peek of it about the fifth inning and saw that he hadn't given up anything. I was like, kind of just keeping track of it. Saw he got through 6, started watching it, and he was just cruising it on the 7th inning. I mean, it was just like, uh-oh. And I'm sitting here looking at values of the perfect game, and I'm like, oh, my God. So, I mean, ended up scoring, 730-ish?
733.
733, and I think I was the 4th highest scorer behind Heite, Smell, and Hen. I'm okay with it. I thought my team's done well. Getting Jose Altuve's been great. Jordan Montgomery was great for me. Former Yard Goat legends.
2 former Yard Goats.
And I had a good week from my pitching. I thought my pitching did pretty well. I traded for Yu Darvish, and he went from a 2-start week to a no-start week, catching the flu. But it wasn't going to matter. Like I said, I think at the end of the day now, I think I'm a game and a half up for the 3rd spot on Hen, and I do not feel comfortable at all with that, with a extremely, extremely, extremely tough schedule coming up. So the Sounds, we gotta fight through it right now. We're in the danger zone. We got a big matchup next week against my arch nemesis, yeah. So I could go on all day. I hope what I've done is now Smell is, I think, buying a little bit, and I'm glad about that. I think now he realizes, like, oh man, I can get into the playoffs, which I've kind of told him through some DMs that he could, and so looking forward to the next week. Glad to get this one behind me. I can't really say much else. Domingo Herman just ruined my world right there.
Yeah, I mean, the epitome of a bad break, I think, Tita, you got this week. Outside of Domingo Herman, which, again, is the reason why it's no one, he did get some pretty good performances at a couple other guys I wanted to highlight. Spencer Steer, who's just been an absolute dog in that Reds offense, had 68. Some of the pitching as well. I mean, he even got a good start out of, like, Austin Gommer, who gave him 36, who hadn't broken 30 since at least before May, if he's even done it at all this season. I think even, what's his name? I think Ashcraft, too, gave him a 33-point start. So he had to step up. Outside of that, Mike Soroka, who we've shit on repeatedly, time after time, gave him a 33-point start. So everything was just going Smell's way this week. And he's actually, got some pretty good pieces here if he wants to buy a little bit, if he wants to sell off some guys while their value is high. I don't know what Domingo Herman's value is. I mean, it says SP1, but, outside of the start, he was coming off 2 starts where he had -14 and -21, gave up 15 earned runs. So, and again, perfect game is unbelievable. You may hate the guy. He's a wife beater, a lot of character issues, but, at least in baseball purposes, a perfect game is probably the hardest thing to do in the sport, and he did it. But yeah, in terms of Tita's team, 733 is still a very solid number. We'll talk about our Altuve Montgomery trade earlier in the week. Of course, both of them absolutely just were absurd this week. I think Monty had 74, and I'll leave my analysis for that a little later on. Also got some good big performance out of Dolis, got 61. Schwarber had 50. JD Martinez, another former Yard Goat, 59. Also a former sod poodle as well, funny enough. But yeah, again, you look at just, the pitching. Tita still had 326 points pitching, which is a good number. Traded for Duvall as well, the game a little bit. But when you have a guy who's a perfect game, it's, almost impossible to beat that. But yeah, good job by Smell getting back in the win column. And Tita's going to look to be rolling again against his favorite friend, Jamie. So should be a fun one.
Yeah, I think Smell's been an interesting toe of the line between buying and selling. Recently, he has bought a few pieces for me and other clubs. Colby Allard had 26 and kind of a spot start for the Braves. I don't know if he's going to get another opportunity since I think he's done relieving more in recent years when healthy. Ken Waldachuk, another former A star, has really found a nice niche in the bullpen. And I think Smell might be the team that has the most pitchers currently in the minors. So it'll be interesting to see whether those continue to be staffed or help fuel a run for the future. And then for Tita, 733, nothing to laugh at. The team's going to be consistent in its output and constantly switching for the makeup of it. So, there's nothing too much to worry about for the Sounds. And if a weakness does show, I'm sure Tita will make a big move to fix it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, Tita. If you take away the perfect game, and obviously, it happened, so you really can't take it away. The only teams he would have lost to were myself and Jon Heite. It's a bit unfortunate that he just happened to play against a guy who pitched a perfect game, which hadn't been done in over a decade. I can't believe Domingo Germán now is one of those pitchers who have done it. Absolutely despicable. I remember, we were talking about this before. Me and Jon Heite saw him pitch live like a month or two ago, and he was abysmal, per usual.
He was terrible.
Awful. Matt Strom outdueled him, but, he caught fire, played a dog shit team, and they did well. It's kind of wild. And I remember another thing that we were talking about this before one of the podcasts, I want to say a couple weeks ago, we were talking about no-hitters. And obviously this was the first perfect game / no-hitter this year, unless I'm forgetting something. But we were talking about it, and we were talking about like a perfect game, what would happen if it happened, and then it just so happened to happen like 2 weeks after that. But it's unfortunate. 733 points will win you most weeks. I think, that's a good range to get around. And, you had good all-around performances. Like you said, Jordan Montgomery did well. You got a good start out of James Paxton, Sonny Gray, who I shipped off to you. I think that was this week. He had a nice quality start. All-star Sonny Gray. J.D. Martinez was mashing the ball. Kyle Schwarber hit a grand slam. I remember watching that. That was huge, and he hit another home run also. Dolis Garcia still continues to do well. It's just you ran into a crazy event that doesn't happen often, and then like you guys mentioned, Smell also got some good pitching performances outside of that. Soroka did well. Gomber. I remember I was kind of actually mad at Graham Ashcraft because I thought the Padres. I had a bet for the Padres to win that day because I saw Ashcraft was pitching, and then they tied it in extras, and then they ended up losing on a Spencer Steer walk-off homer, I think. Yeah, Spencer Steer hit a walk-off. Oddly enough, Spencer Steer, who also is owned by Smell, but, what are you going to do? It's unfortunate. I think, this week and I believe last week, your team, kind of was putting in the production. It's just unforeseen events happened, and you can't control that if you're in Tita's spot. So, obviously you hope you can bounce back, but we're going to head to the next matchup. We'll go with the Hartford Yard-Goats, who put an absolute walloping on the Rochester Red Wings. Right now, 10-28 to 5-16, the first time we've seen 1,000 points cracked in a normal 7-day week, no extended week. Jon Heite, obviously this is your team, your boys. We'll give you the start, or we'll let you take the floor.
Yes, thank you, Hen. So first off, good game with Dave. Unfortunate that, if anyone's going to go up against a team that put up 1,000 points, I'll talk about his team first before I even talk about mine, because there's a couple of guys on his team I want to highlight that, despite what my team did, just put on some absolute just masterclass performances. Bracton's former prodigy, Spencer Torkelson, had 79 points. He actually matched with Matt Olson with 79 as well. So he was a guy that really popped off for him. Jaimer Candelario on Washington at 42. Carlos Santana at 52. Had a couple of good starts as well. So definitely some pieces to buy if you're a contender looking for on Dave's team as he's really looking more towards the future. But in terms of my team, funny enough, there was a couple of things. I didn't even hit 12 starts because Framber Valdez got hurt during, I think, 2 starts ago, and I benched Michael Waka. So I would have had probably, I think, 20 to 30 more points if not for that. But, I mean, just absolutely just insane to watch this team the whole week. I had 592 offensive points, which I didn't even think was possible. Olsen gave me 79, like I mentioned before. Marcus Semien, 64. Mookie Betts, I mean, before I even get to Ohtani, he gave me almost 100 points himself. He gave me 96 in just a crazy week. Nick Castellanos, Bryce Harper's car got stolen, gave me a 73 spot. Very happy to see. But, I mean, Shohei Ohtani had 149 points in a week. He had a start where he gave up 1 run, had 10 strikeouts. He hit 6 home runs in 24 at-bats, so a fourth of his at-bats this week were home runs. Pretty insane stuff. My pitching was good as well. I'll talk about the Cole edition in just a little bit. But the thing I'm most proud of, again, I mentioned it before. I mean, first of all, Chris Bassett, 48, was big. He was really stinking it up for a while. Even shitty-ass Corbin Burns gave me 40, which I was happy about. Former Sound Nathan Eovaldi gave me a 37 in his much highly anticipated debut with the Yard Goats. We had pitching look good. But yeah, what I was going to say was the thing I'm most proud about this team is I'm doing all this right now without Judge, who's probably my second best player, arguably. I think Ohtani's one. He's probably either 2 or 3. I got 2 arms coming back this week in Rodon and Erod, and I'm going to have Fried back, I think, towards the end of July. So again, there's a lot of room for improvement on top of a week that I didn't think was possible. I knew I was close to hitting 1,000. I didn't think it would happen this week. But again, like Cody has mentioned in podcasts before, it's a little concerning, just a tad bit, because I know my team's going to majorly regress this week. And it's happened already a couple of times this year where I put up 900-plus points and only ended with like 650 to 700 the week after just because some guys cool off. Unfortunately, of course, it's the Larks next week, which, I hope I stay hot for that. But proud of the Yard Goats this week. Dave's got a lot to look forward to in the future. And, yeah, we're just going to keep rolling here in Hartford.
Yeah.
Just my bad. Go ahead.
Nah, you go, Tita. You can go.
Just looking at the Yard Goats, man, it's just unfair. He's got pitching. He's got bats. Matt Olson, just a pure dog. He just mashes baseballs. He's got Shohei and Matt are the 2 top home run hitters in baseball right now. But 4 Matt Olsons would not get Ellie De La Cruz.
Nope.
But 1 Matt Olson's probably going to help lead a team to a title. The pitching's there. There's really not any weaknesses. I think there's very few teams. I think Hen's one. I think Cody's the other. That if they can match, firepower with height, but it's just a tough go. And if you see him on the schedule, it's going to take a lot of luck and a lot of your team playing well and maybe a perfect game. So, if you can get all those things and his team not play well, maybe you got a shot. But he's just Heite's just firing on all cylinders right now. I really don't know what it's going to take to beat him. I really don't, outside of just an off week.
Connor?
So we're mentioning that Heite's team has no weaknesses, but I think one thing mentioned on a couple of podcasts is sometimes the rivalry between what the rankings are. Wander Franco versus Bo Bichette. Sean Murphy versus JT Realmuto. JT is catcher number 3. Olsen is first baseman number 2. Third baseman number 7. Lindor is the third-ranked shortstop. Betts and Castellanos are the 2 and 6 right fielders, respectively. And Mike Trout, center fielder 3. Except for Semien, I don't know if there's an Ohtani. Obviously, I don't think there's a 1 rank. So come on, get on, John. But in all seriousness, the team is just firing all cylinders. I'll spend a minute on Dave's team. William Contreras was acquired from me, I think, and 37 points for a 25-year-old catcher is really a great building block for a future team. Obviously, Braxton's boy Torkelson put in some work. I think one of the most recent series was in Colorado, so that might have helped. Seth Brown with 40, he could be a piece that really helped. Santander, always consistent for 20. And then some of the craziest pitching. Rich Hill had 27. Tita once made a trade with me with the premise of you don't want to start Rich Hill, and now I think he's a top 50 pitcher. Patrick Corbin had 46. Then he just also has effectively used relievers. So I think there are a lot of positive takeaways for Dave's team, but he went against one of the best teams in fantasy history.
Yeah, Jon Heite obviously has a good team, but we're obviously preparing for the 2007 Pats season right now. But 1,000 points, you really can't say much. Like, you got good starts all around. Shohei Ohtani hit 6 home runs and 24 at bats. Nick Castellanos has been on fire. He just got an All-Star nod. Shout out him. Mookie Betts had 96 points, which, in the midst of Ohtani 149 points, I feel like Mookie's performance might be flying under the radar. He had a multi-homer game. Matt Olson with 79. There's not holes on this roster. I think, like Tita said, you have to hope for an off week. Maybe like one of these other top contenders can go blow for blow where, maybe Jon Heite could still score like 800, 900, 800 points and then still lose, but even then that still might be considered an off week. I was saying this before, and this is just props to Jon Heite. We're first and second respectively in points for at this point now, and the difference between me and him is 800 points, and I think that might have grown actually since I last checked. So that's an elite week. That's like one of the highest scoring weeks, and that's the difference between the 1 and 2. It's kind of unfathomable to think about, but shifting over to Dave's team, Bracton's best friend Spencer Torkelson with a 79 bomb, Seth Brown 40, Carlos Santana 52, Patrick Corbin. I remember watching this game live, and I was like, oh my god, he got in his bag like the pass and had an absolute gem. And then Trevor Williams also got a win today against the Phillies, so he did right on that front. But it's hard, obviously, when you're up against 1,028 points. It's kind of hard to really win a game. So Dave did what he could. Shifting over to our next matchup, we have the Bismarck Larks taking on the Amarillo Sod Poodles, winning by a score of 681 to 470. Connor, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts on your team this week?
I think everyone knew Bracton was going to win, and his team that will give him crap for not scoring 700 points, but 681 as of this recording is nothing to laugh at. 83 from Luis Robert Jr., that looks like a terrific trade so far. Jose Siri, who I think has been a waiver wire at times, with 22. TJ Friedel with 57. Volpe's Chicken Parmesan Dinner is clearly paying off, 50-piece there. Andrew McCutcheon with 43, so 407 points of offense. That almost outscored my team in total. Then their completely revamped pitching has had its ups and downs. He did not hit 300 points pitching, which I think is the mark for a true contender. So I think he might need to make some additional moves if he wants to compete with the Heights and the Hens of the world. But realistically, I'm pretty pleased with my team. I was able to move a lot of big pieces for picks. Brandon Drury with 28 before I moved him to Smell. Josh Bell with 30, continuing to be consistent. Javier Baez had a grand slam today, which was very helpful. And then my pitching just looked a little bit better than it has in recent weeks. David Peterson in a 2-start week with 42. Brady Singer had 56. Decent relief streaming. So I think there's definitely still opportunities for improvement with my team, but I think it's definitely the outlook is a whole lot better than it was against Jaime or Bry a couple weeks ago.
Jon Heite?
Yeah, when you look at this matchup, I mean, Connor, you still got some good performances. out of some bats. I know you traded away, I believe, Matt Chapman during the week. He had a couple of good at-bats before you actually traded him, which was good to see. But yeah, I mean, the pitching, even seemed like Carlos Carrasco had a decent start, who I know, like, I sold him when he was super, super low. He's looked like he's starting to bounce back a little bit since then. David Peterson, we were talking about in the main chat, who for the longest time has been really not good. But this week you got some good starts out of him, had 42 over 2 starts, and I'm not sure why they pulled him early today. Very interesting stuff. But Brady Singer, who was a real, people were coveting him in the offseason, at least in our league, had a very good week. He had 56, like you mentioned. So, again, you're still building around that team. You're requiring a ton of assets every week. So I think the team's going to just keep improving on a week-by-week basis. And in terms of the Larks, I mean, we give him shit probably every single day. But he got some huge performances. I mean, Luis Robert, he was Braxton's guy. And, before he goes on this strikeout tear, which I'm sure is going to come eventually, just an unreal week, 83 points. He had 3 homers. He had 4 stolen bases, 10 hits. Insane. Even in a week as well where Ellie did absolutely nothing. I think he had 13 points. He had 4 hits and almost 30 at-bats. So, Bracken's bats, I think, are definitely the strongest point of his team at this point. He's done a good job of building that up. I know he acquired Vlad, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And in terms of Volpe, the guy who I'll save the rest for later for the discussion, but a guy I thought I'd never trade away. Gave him 50. You love to see the turnaround. He's one of my favorite players in baseball. I will say he had 3 games against the A's, so if there's a way to turn around your struggles, it's Chicken Parm and the Oakland Athletics. So I don't know if he's going to stay this hot next week or the week after, but for this week, love to see him drop a 50 bomb. But yeah, he got some very good pitching performances. Dave Dunning almost had a no-hitter, I think, before the ninth. I think he had 8 2/3, and he ended up giving up a home run. Shane Bieber, who still sucks balls, had 37. Mackenzie Gore, I know, is hurt, so somebody's got to look out for. Josiah Gray gave him a really good start, 37. Ranger Suarez, I know, had a bad start and a good start. So the Larks are starting to roll a little bit. I'm going to have a rematch with him next week, which I am very excited about. But again, his bats are absolutely no joke, and he's done a very good job of building it up. And even I'll say one with TJ Friedel too, a guy we were all laughing at 57. So the TJ Friedel enthusiast and Bragton Abella just almost dropped 700 in a week where Ellie only had 13. So props to Bragton, and again, Connor's team definitely going to be improving on a week-to-week basis starting as early as next week.
Yeah, I just don't think, the thing about Connor is his team is he's building. He's going to keep building and getting assets. The thing that I like about what, Connor does is he does what I would do if I had his team. Where I'm going to take on a couple of different type players. I'm going to get some older guys. I'm going to get some younger guys. And I'm going to do all that. And at the same time, with the whole intention of building it up so that I can get more for them than I paid, which is exactly, to me, the right way to do it in a dynasty league when you don't have a team that may be competing. Thing about the Bracton, he's done such a good job with getting his bats at such a high quality level. He's done a really good job of that. And I think at the end of the day, he's looking at it like, hey, it's time for me to go compete. I got a chance, with the Sultan of SWAT, Ellie De La Cruz, and, he got Vlad. There may be some things that he's going to have to do in regards to his pitching. But at the same time, I can totally understand kind of what it is that he's doing and why he's doing it. I just hope it works out for him.
Yeah, for as much shit as I give the Bismarck Larks, and I will continue to give the Bismarck Larks until, comes back to haunt me in some form, and I still probably do it even if it does come back to haunt me, but He was close. We were neck and neck. I was kind of, obviously looking over, seeing what the league-wide scores were. And for up until really today, me and Bracton were close in points. I kind of started pulling away, like, yesterday, today. I had the two big starts from Strider and Abbott, which really put the nail in the coffin. Obviously, we weren't playing each other, so it really didn't matter. But, his team did play well, 681 points. We always say that 700 threshold is going to win you most weeks. And, kind of echoing you guys said, a lot of good performances. Luis Robert, TJ Friedel, Anthony Volpe, finally realized, he is playing in the Major League Baseball. And shout out him for that. And then, got a great start from Dane Dunning. Bryce Elder, who I still think is god-awful, got 26 points. Ranger Suarez had a couple of nice starts. 681's a solid mark for Bracton, and, obviously he's happy about that because he's still really fighting for that 7th spot. We're talking about that fight, and, picking up a win in a week like this, when teams like Paul are still winning, Jamie won, but then you get Bry who dropped a game. It's always good to keep up with the pack and kind of stay in contention there. So, shout out the Larks. Sometimes I still question what you're doing, but hey, the results came in this week. Almost 700 points would have been a good majority of these teams. So heading over to next matchup, we have the Tampa Tarpons in an absolute barn burner, low-scoring affair against the Kannapolis Cannonballers, 592 to 462. Tita, I'll start with you first because I know you've been kind of critical of Jamie, your arch nemesis. What were your thoughts on this matchup?
I mean, just underachieving. You got a team like he's got arguably, and I think Jon Heite would have a good argument about this with Shohei. He's got arguably the best player in baseball, the most exciting player in baseball in Ronald Acuna Jr., and the lineup that he has is sensational. And hey, I'm just going to call a spade a spade. The work he does on that team is terrible. It's embarrassing. That's why I'm going to beat him next week. But we'll talk about that in the pod. But with that later on in the pod, with his team, it shouldn't even have been that close. I would not think. And like I said, that's what we get on here and. I feel like we call people out, and, I've called him out a couple of times to try to rattle the cage. And, I know he's looking forward to next week for his Super Bowl. I'm looking forward to it, too. I mean, just 592 out of his team. I mean, what are you doing? How does that happen? You look, Acuna had such a great week. I'm trying to look and see and find. It's not popping up for me right now, but how many total starts he had for the week?
He had 11.
He had 11.
11. Okay, so he had 11 starts, but, man, it's just tough. Seager didn't have the best week, but that, of course, that probably means that they're going to come out and hit for 900 on me next week, which if that happens, I tip my cap to him. I just feel like he can do a little bit better job than what he's doing. He made a couple of good trades, but then he comes at you with some offers that just are mind blowing. And then Homko, man, he's working. His team's just had bad luck. I mean, it's either he's hot one week and he runs into somebody that scores 800 points, or he ties them, and then he just. His pitching lets him down the following week. Yuri had minus 24. Oviedo had negative 17. I was watching the Yuri start. He had 86 points this week from his starters. That's not going to win you anything. And I was watching the Yuri start, and it was just the Braves were hot, and he could do no right. So, I mean, I'm kind of hard on Homko at times. But I think it's well deserved. I think his team is elite, and I would in the future I would hope that he understands that his team's there. Just give it a little bit extra push to get him to the finish line, And I think if he does that, sky's the limit. I mean, he's going to beat a lot of teams. His team on paper is better than mine, but I feel like I'm going to manage mine a little better. And at the end of the day, we'll see how it goes. So his talent's there. I just, you wish he'd start putting in that work to get there.
Jon Heite?
Yeah, Tina, I mean, you brought it up. This is the most beatable I think Jamie's team has been in a while. This matchup was super close. I think a lot throughout the weekend. I think it might have been over the weekend where Jamie started to pull away a little bit. Acuna dropping over 100. I think him and Ohtani right now are 1A, 1B. At least with Ohtani because of the pitching too. You probably have to put him as the greatest player in baseball. But offensively, I know Ohtani's got the home runs. He's been over 300. But Acuna's got 20 homers and 40 stolen bases already. So
crazy.
You can't go wrong with either. But yeah, his team did underperform this week, and I know you talk about we've talked about sometimes the difficulty managing the team. But I don't know that it was even the problem this week. He hit 11 starts. I think the week before, a couple weeks ago, he didn't even hit the start limit, or he was close to not hitting the start limit. Just got some pretty bad luck out of some of these pitchers. Sandy stinks, so I'm not even going to talk about Sandy. But Gausman gave him a really good start, and then a kind of okay start against Boston. I think one of them, the Millers were a little bit human this week. I know one of them is hurt. He traded for Aaron Nola, which ended up being, was a good trade, but he only gave him 11. Luis Severino, minus 16, didn't help. But I just think it was just, a bad luck week, to be honest. This team is way too good to not be that. And I think if he's hitting, if he's not going to hit 12, 11, I think, can get the job done. I only had 11 this week. But, with the offense he has, Freddie Freeman, 37 is low for him. Bobby Witt, 20 is way low for him. Tatis, 27 is low. A bunch of his guys just did not perform like they usually do. So, unfortunately, Tita, I think the offense for him, he had 379 this week. He's probably going to have at least 450 plus against you next week.
Oh, no doubt.
Just with the natural order of things, when your offense doesn't do well, especially the team of his caliber with all these future, potential Hall of Famers on it. And I think, again, that the pitching as well is going to get a little bit better. He's going to get some better starts out of some guys. So, but in terms of Honko, you talk about just the worst luck possible. His offense is there. 3 less points than Jamie. Christian Yelich, 58. Brandon Nimmo, 64. Michael Harris, who people were giving up on for a while. He's been tearing the cover off the ball. He had almost 50. I think he had 45. Nathaniel Lau had 45. But yeah, the pitching, I think if Honko had, if Yuri didn't have that bad start, maybe 2 other arms in there, could have been even more interesting at the end of it. I know it's so hard to acquire in this week. In this league, excuse me. But he's got to find a way because his offense is good. And, matching up with as a good offense as Jamie is, who's got, maybe even the best offense in the league potentially, I think it's definitely something to stay positive about. But yeah, Jamie's first Tita is going to be WrestleMania next week. And Honko, he's got to get some more wins eventually. I think it's going to come pretty soon, maybe even next week.
Honko's a playoff team next year. I think one of the main headlines this offseason is going to be how he balances out the hitting, which it clearly just went up against probably the second best offense in the league, and the pitching. Obviously, Brian Bayo has been a massive find. Uri Perez is maybe facing an innings limit, but he's had some tough times. Tanner Bybee with 36. And with the Tarpons, I think they're kind of in a weird spot. I will give Jaime credit for making some depth moves that we've criticized in previous weeks weren't there. But the downside to that is we've talked about with Brackton's team before the all-in buys that younger players and especially younger pitchers can be inconsistent. So for Michael Kopech's 27, he currently has the Millers, Gavin Williams. How long, if Tampa's committed to winning now, is the GM going to tolerate the ups and downs they're inevitably going to come to that, or are they going to be packaged again for some more assets that can help win in the week to come? So I think, 592 points for maybe one of the most star-studded teams is a disappointment, but it's definitely going to be fireworks with he and Tia's matchup, and I think there are a lot of good takeaways for Honko as well.
Yeah, I think Jamie got lucky this week, super lucky. We talk about how Hamko has been able to score, 700, high 600s, and would just fall into bad luck. Jamie just scored 592 and won. I mean, you're not going to beat most teams. I think that would have only beaten Chad, obviously Hamko, who won. He beat Connor, and then Scott. Obviously, Ronald Acuna had an amazing week, 107 points. His total offense had 379. Acuna was responsible for over a quarter of that production. A lot of his top guys just been struggling. Pete Alonso has not been good ever since the Mets have been terrible. Bryce Harper, I don't know if it's the Tommy John, but he's lost the pop in his swing. He almost actually hit a home run today. He just clipped it foul, but he seems he seems to be kind of not where he needs to be, which is unfortunate because I love him in his game. Bobby Witt Jr. had a down week. Freddie Freeman had a down week, but it wasn't enough. And then looking over towards his pitching, Sandy, he stinks. I knew this. Michael Kopech, who I know he loves, actually just got put on the 15-day IL, so he might be out till at least the All-Star break, potentially longer. Bryce Miller's been kind of getting rocked recently, had another ass start, 16 points. Aaron Nola, who is, the opposite of a big game pitcher, only 11 points. Severino also stinks. I saw him get lit up by the St. Louis Cardinals last night. So, I mean, obviously, and he got a good performance with Gavin Williams, so I'll give him that, but 213 points, not going to beat many teams. And then looking over at Hamko, like you guys said, just couldn't really get it done. Had, 376 points is good from the bats, but when you're only getting 86 points from your arms, it's just not good. Estevez, who I believe he shipped off. I know.
Yeah, I got him.
Yeah, shipped off Estevez. So, that was a big reliever from his. He brought in Munoz, but Alvarado didn't have a big, kind of struggled. Johan Duran didn't do well, so I know he relies upon them. Yuri Perez, who I was actually, before I made my big trade, which I'll talk about, I actually was in some conversations about going after him. He got lit up by a Christmas tree. Then against the Atlanta Braves, they just shit on everyone they face. Johan Oviedo, -17. So, I mean, Jamie got lucky. I don't know if he'll get lucky again against Tita, but he got the win. This was a necessary win for him because, like I said before, Braxton won this week. Paul won this week. Obviously Bry lost, but a lot of the teams that he's fighting for, those playoff spots for, picked up a win. So just got to keep ahead of the pack. So heading over, we have two more matchups left as my computer freezes, but I can still see the score. The Bowling Green Hot Rods take down the Richmond Flying Squirrels 648 to 263. Connor, we'll start with you. Kind of give me your thoughts on this matchup.
Well, it's going into the season, what might have been close to the consensus league best roster, and now clearly a top 2 or 3 team still versus a team that had a GM switch going into it. I think Scott's done a really nice job with this team. 36 from Josh Naylor is going to be a performance that contender will look at, and maybe once I know there have been some blocks out about the first base market. Adrian Hauser with 28. Colin Ray, who was a waiver wire add a decent amount with 59. If he can continue that could be a major piece at the deadline. For Hot Rods, I think 261 pitching points might be a little bit of a disappointment, since that's not quite the 300 pitching, 600 total that is the most often compete numbers. But Spencer Strider with 46 is encouraging. Taijuan Walker, who's a recent addition, continued his hot streak with 33. Devin Williams, who I don't understand how the Brewers use him at times, at 53 points is exactly what you want from a reliever when you're not just streaming them. And then 387 points from the bats. Jazz Chisholm, a recent acquisition with 49. Wander Franco doing his thing with 42. 59 points combined from the catching position, which is just terrific. I guess Henry Davis is a recent call-up. So I think 648 might not be the total that Cody's looking for when trying to compare his team against Heights or Hen, but realistically, it's still a great total. Maybe a little bit of an off week, and I think there's going to be some positive regression in the next couple.
Tita or Jon Heite?
Yeah, I think for this matchup, I think if you even ask Cody, I mean, he got the win. That is all that matters. That is the most important thing. The Hot Rods are still rolling. I don't think this went exactly like he thought, like he wanted to go or thought it would. 648, obviously a solid number, but I mean, against some of the other teams, I think actually Braxton would have beat him this week, which was, I'm sure he would hate that. Some things I want to know about Cody's team. Like you mentioned, the catching position, probably the best catching situation in all the league between Murphy and Henry Davis. Just absurd amount of points. Austin Riley's been super hot, and he's back. All-star, 52 points. Wander with 40. Made some very interesting trades this week. We saw Jazz Chisholm already give him a 50-piece, but I think these next couple weeks are going to be really, really crucial for the Hot Rods going forward. If you look at it, Jazz is already hurt again with a left oblique soreness. Kershaw is probably going on the IL. They said Monday he's probably going to get put on it for his shoulder, which is going to happen eventually. Guys like him, Verlander, they're bound to be hurt eventually. I think it's going to hurt Cody in the foreseeable future, just because McClanahan's on the 15-day IL with the back problem. He obviously traded away Strider, brought back McClanahan, which obviously made a ton of sense. McClanahan is probably the best pitcher in the AL when healthy, but I think he's got some more moves to make, and I know he's probably going to do it to add some pitching, just because 261, obviously the bats were there, almost scoring 400 points. That is a uber elite amount of points. The bats are not the issue, but I think the arms, which, has been such a strong point of him throughout the season, I think he's going to add a couple here and there over the next couple of weeks, especially towards the deadline, especially, if Kershaw's out long-term, potentially. I think McClanahan, hopefully will be okay. Back is not a good injury. But I also, at the same time, he probably would have hit close to 700, maybe even more. Emmanuel Clase gave him 2 absolute poop relief appearances. I think he had -8 total, but he had -10 for back-to-back appearances. Devin Williams is a dog, so there's really not much else to say there. But I don't think this went exactly how Cody thought it would, but regardless, a win is a win. Great teams find ways to win. He did. And again, Scott's team, I think just a lucky performance by some guys. I think Giancarlo Stanton on his team is going to get hot. Only 10 points. San Francisco Alvarez has kind of cooled off. I know he had 1 homer this week. But, he's definitely got some good pieces. He got a very good haul for Duvall, I think, who was traded. So he's going to keep looking more towards the future and still got some pieces for the deadline. But the Hot Rods continue to win. And again, do not be surprised if Cody's making some more big-time trades in the next couple of weeks.
No, I agree 100%. I think when you look at it, this was a down week for Cody by his standards. But if you look at it as well, I don't see that lasting. I see him going out, making the moves. He has the pieces. He can get whoever he wanted.
Yeah.
I just think, too, that Scott, I gave him a really good haul. I'm really high on Doval, however you say it. I think he's an elite closer. And, a lot of these guys, they're selling those off. But Scott knows what he's doing. Like I said, I played with Scott in the numerous leagues, through one league for years and years. Scott's going to get it right. And so it's only a matter of time. Same thing about Cody. Cody's going to be able to go get whoever he wants to go get. And like I said, at the end of the day, I think the 3 best teams in our league are Cody, Heite, and Hen. In any kind of order that you decide that you want to put them in, I'd say Heit's up there up front. I think Hen and Cody are actually about equal, to be honest with you, depending on the week. But, he's going to be able to do what he wants to do. Like I said, the commission's going to get it right. He's going to put the time in. And that's part of what you can respect. And Scott's going to do the exact same thing. At the end of the day, they're going to run it and get their teams correct. And they're not going to wait around and hope for something to happen. So, like I said, both of them, they're going to be right down there in it when the time comes. Scott in the future, and Cody for now is going to be all in with it. So, like I said, I think Cody's going to make some moves this week and kind of reassess during that All-Star break when we got that 2-week matchup to get what he needs to get.
Yeah, and I will say this. I know, obviously Scott isn't trying to win now, but I do have to point out he did not get the start limit this week, only 7 starts. I get it, I get he's trying to, rebuild, and I like what he got for Doval, and I think he still has some other pieces. Scott, if you want to trade Bryson Stott, I'm all ears on that deal, I guess, but I've been hitting up about that. So I mean, I guess if I lose him making that public, I think that'll be on me. But my computer froze, so I guess I'll just kind of go off ad lib on this one. But obviously, Cody said this 6:48. Not my computer. I'm recording this on. I got a dual monitor setup going on where I look stats on one and I'm on Discord for the other. But obviously, 6:48 is not where Cody wants to be. He said, and I agree with him. Obviously he did a lot of roster churning, brought in pitchers that aren't starting until earlier in the week, traded away guys that were supposed to start. Obviously he got the win, so it really doesn't matter. But it is interesting. Like you guys said, I agree with you. These next 2 weeks are gonna be pivotal. I don't know. I forget what his actual division's looking like, but I think he basically is the runaway to win that division because every good team besides from him is in our division with me, Jon Heite, Bracton's in our division as well. I think Paul's in there. I'm trying to think who.
I think Bry's in the other division. I think.
So Bry's the only current playoff team or potential current playoff team that's not in our division. So Cody will run away with that regardless. And I know he knows his team, he still can strive to improve and get better. He knows he's still got some moves making. I'm confident he'll make those moves. He's a smart GM, he's an aggressive GM. He's proactive, not reactive. So obviously I think he'll be on the forefront in that. And I will say this, and I don't know if I should save this for the trade talk or not, but I was weary of McClanahan. I was weary of him. I kept holding on to him. Bracton got pissed I didn't trade him to him. I didn't trade Jordan Walker for him. But, obviously I hope he does well. But I was weary of that back injury because back injuries are a bitch. And I've learned that. Hopefully it comes back healthy. But I kind of wanted to give my 2 cents out there. Maybe I should have saved that for the trade talk. But whatever. Computer has been restarted. Cody's going to find his way back to the old front. I will say -8 from Emmanuel Clase is kind of rough, but that's about it. Heading over to the final matchup of the week, we have the Norfolk Tides, taking down the Oklahoma City Dodgers 729 to 482. Paul just keeps, Paul just lurks in the shadows. A nice performance from him and his team. I guess I'll start things off because I kind of already did it. 439 points from his bats, electric stuff. J.P. Crawford, former Philly, 51. Had a good performance. Ezekiel Tovar really starting to kind of find his groove. I know he was struggling a bit early on, but he's really kind of starting to click as of late. I mean, past 7 days, he was a 10-point bat. Past 2 weeks, he's been a 9-point bat. He's kind of starting to settle into like a 6.5 point bat, which, especially for how shitty the Rockies are and how young he is, that's always a good sign. Andrew Vaughn with a 50 piece. Adley Rutschman 35, a bit low for standards, but still solid nonetheless. And then looking over towards his pitching, huge week out of Reed Detmers. I know he's been high on him. 80-point week from him. Zach Eflin, who, great performance out of him, 30 points. A bit of a rough performance from Taj Bradley. I was kind of trolling him a bit in main chat about that. -14 points. He's obviously a talented player. Rays are weird with starting pitchers, and kind of got rocked today against the Mariners. But good win for Brian. And looking over towards Chad, Luke Raley, who I actually oddly dropped. I dropped earlier. He was kind of a stream guy for me. He's been a 7.5 point bat in the past month. You win some, you lose some, I guess. But he was absolutely electric this week. 48 points from Ha-Seong Kim. 304 points from the bats, is not bad. Just the pitching, only 178 is not going to win you a lot of weeks. Matt Strahm didn't do well. Chris Sanchez, I guess it's his fault for starting Chris Sanchez. That guy fucking stinks. Tommy Henry, got him 31 points. Obviously, we say starting pitching is a commodity, and Chad doesn't have that commodity right now. I assume with the fucking 8 billion picks he has this year, he'll get Paul Skeens and Dolander, so he'll be sitting comfortably in the next couple of years. But yeah, I mean, Paul picked, like I said, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but Paul obviously picking up necessary wins, because the fight for that last spot, especially as we're heading into July and August, is going to be huge. Getting these wins is necessary. If anyone wants to go next.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Paul is a team that I think he's had some bad luck too. And to me, he isn't really a guy you want to play. I think he's a guy who, could beat anybody if, they were to match up and, Hen or Height has a 750-point week. I think Paul's got the kind of team to where, when his team is on, I mean, he's got a lot. I mean, I think, he would say it himself. He probably would want a little bit more in the pitching department. But, he's got some pieces that are going to make you like, whoo, I don't want to play them. He needs Yoshida to get healthy, because he doesn't want to bank on Benintendi, which I can't blame him there. But he puts 439 up with the bats and, 290 with his arms. I think he wanted a few more points out of his arms, but it's not terrible. And then just you look at Chad, man, and he works. He's got 304 with his bats, which is good. He got assets for Phil Blackburn, which was great. I didn't think anybody would pay for Phil Blackburn, but he got it out of Smell. And like Ken said, he's got 395. He's got 395 of the 398 picks in the draft this next year, and so he'll be able to infuse that team with talent, and he'll get to kind of play around and piece things however he wants to piece them. Still has some assets. I like Leody Taveras. I think he's got some appeal. Austin Hayes has some appeal. Like you said, I think Hen already touched on Luke Rayleigh, and if you want to look at it for a catcher, he's got Elias Diaz. Which is in Colorado. I mean, he's got some pieces that you can trade off to help him out. Like I said, I played with Scott. I mean, I played with Chad in leagues for years. He's going to get it right. He's very meticulous. And so, yeah, I think there's two teams that are building. I think Chad's building for 2-3 years from now, and I think Paul has got a chance if he wants to cash in some of his chips to make a run now.
Yeah, I'm going to say this first and foremost. I mean, Paul's team is fucking good. I mean, if we remember correctly, it's not for the greatest live spectacle, in my opinion, in Sunday Night Baseball. I would have lost to Paul last week. So this team is no joke. This team, like Tita just said, I mean, if he wanted to buy at the deadline to add even more to fill a couple of holes here and there, I mean, this team is just so good. Remember, he just traded for Julio as well a week ago. Didn't even have that big of a performance, only at 38, which is kind of low for his standards. But, I mean, just elite offensive performance, 439. Reed Detmers, I think you had just mentioned, Tita, 80 points is crazy. He's got all the assets to do whatever he wants, similar to Cody, where, they can keep buying if they want to really, just make their teams even more loaded. And Paul is a team you do not want to face in the playoffs. I do not want to play him in the playoffs if I match up against him, especially after what happened last week. In terms of Chad, I had to double check again, but I mean, I'm sure he's thinking the exact same thing as me, but I don't think he really cares if he's going to win or lose, at least the rest of the season. I mean, this guy, at the minimum, is going to get number one pick because he's got like 8 first-round picks, including his own. So I would say, maybe he's trying to tank. But even if he doesn't tank, I mean, a couple of the teams that are a little bit lower in record, he has their first. So he can do whatever he wants. He holds the cards to the table for the next, year or two of picks. I know Smel's got the 25 picks, but for this year in a loaded draft, he's going to get, probably get Dylan Cruz, like you mentioned, Paul Skeens, Dolander, assuming Bragg doesn't try to trade for him. But he's also got pieces like Luke Raley could be on the move, I'm sure. He's always finding a way. I mean, if there's an old dude that's raking, I'm going to try to get him from Chad because I'm thankful for Nick Castellanos and Jorge Solera I was able to get from him. But Haesung Kim as well was a guy I want to talk about. Gave him 48 points on the week, which was crazy. Has some decent pitching performances as well. I know he only had 178, but a couple of guys, obviously not big names, that gave him some decent performances. But again, Paul is a team that could beat anyone. Should have beaten me. And Chad could do whatever the fuck he wants because he's got all the cards and he's got youth, he's got prospects. He's going to ball for the next 3 years minimum.
Yeah.
So, of course... Yeah.
Sorry, Connor. You can go. I forgot. You're good.
Okay. So, Chad had 300 points from the offense. That's just incredible. Tavares is a hot asset he could either keep or potentially trade. Brandon Marsh at 32 is nothing to laugh at. Paul Blackburn was a really nice waiver wire ad. I think he was added and dropped from the Sounds, my team, maybe another. He got 25 and not the easiest start. Cole Irvin's had a little bit of a renaissance, not the best start today, but whatever. And then one massive narrative for Paul's team, I won't point this out because Paul and Bracton are probably fighting for the 7 and 8 seed at this point. Paul had 439 offensive points and 290 pitching. Bracton was slightly lower in both categories, 407 to 274. So I think these performances are pretty similar, and how they manage getting more pitching in the weeks to come is really maybe going to be the determining factor in who the 6 or 7 seed is going to be. So that's going to be really interesting to see in the next 5 or 6 weeks. I think the deadline is some point in mid-August, but I'm sure both teams are looking to actively improve, especially on the pitching side, and want to see how they do it.
Yeah, and I'll kind of add on to this before we get to the deals, which there were a lot this week. I mean, the 4 through 9 seed is really still up for air. I mean, obviously I know I've been streaking, but I'm still, 8 and 5. That's only a game out from the 7th, actually even the 8th seed. I'm 8 and 5 at the 4 seed. Jamie's 8 and 5 at the 5 seed. Bry is 7 and 5 and 1 at the 6 seed. Paul and Brackton are tied for 7 and 6. But, Smell, he's creeping up there. He's 5 and 8 this week. Obviously, we're talking about Paul's playing me this week. Bracton's playing Jon Heite this week. So, and Jamie and Tita are playing this week. So, I mean, there's 3 losses, or I guess 2. Bracton could beat Jon Heite. But there are at least 2 of those teams are going to lose this week. Probably 3. No offense, Bracton. I guess that's a spoiler for the previews. I'm sorry. But, I mean, Smell can catch up and kind of knock out 2 of these potential playoff teams. But, I mean, that's something we'll kind of look more towards that, especially as the weeks develop on, and maybe we can even talk a bit about it as we're heading into the previews. But it is the deals. One of the crazier weeks. I wouldn't say it's the craziest weeks, especially cooled down a bit at the end of the week. But we had a lot of deals, and I'm going to kind of bundle these 2 together because I think it only makes sense because of who was dealt and also the kind of time frame between them. So at 2 a.m. after Sunday night's pod ended, I think we discussed the Nola Sandy trade in the other episode.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. I thought we did. I just wanted to double check. But so at 2 a.m. after the pod on Sunday night, Bracton goes out to get Garrett Cole and Luis Giannipa. I assume it's how you pronounce the name. If I'm mispronouncing it, my apologies. And he sends Bobby Miller, Bryce Miller, and Gavin Williams. And then 10 minutes later, he trades away trades away Garrett Cole to Jon Heite for Jackson Chourio and Anthony Volpe. I have my thoughts on this, but I will let Jon Heite, since you're one of the 3 teams involved in this deal, I'll let you talk first because obviously you were one of the recipients. I'll let you go, and then we can share our pieces afterwards.
Yeah, so I got to say first some context. So after the pod, me, Brack, and Tita were just hanging out on Voice. Anyone could have joined us. We were just shooting the shit, talking some turkey. So, first of all, Garrett Cole has been a guy I have been trying to get literally since I've joined this league. Jamie has had a price for him, and fairly so. A lot of the season he's been SP1, so if there's a guy to overpay for, it's him. I was actually talking to Jamie about Cole, and then Brackton, I guess, heard it and was like, fuck it, I'm going to get Garrett Cole, which he did. Bobby Miller, Bryce Miller, and Gavin Williams. Looking back on it, I think Brackton probably regrets it a little bit because, those are three elite young arms that fit his time frame pretty perfectly. But he's wanted Churio back for a while. I knew it. And Tita remembers this, that, I was saying, like, Brackton, all right, it's going to be Churio, whatever. He originally wanted Churio Gallon. I really didn't want to give up Gallon, but I was pretty close, honestly. But we got it down to, once he brought up Volpe, which was a guy, I literally, when we all joined this league, Hen remembers this, I actually took this team out of, all the teams available because Volpe was on it. Volpe is, probably my favorite Yankee right now. I didn't imagine myself trading him. I was ready to just start him at shortstop next season once, Lindor or Xander just, died of old age or whatever. But, Garrett Cole, I've been trying to get since I started. He is, probably the second best pitcher in the AL, maybe even number one. Now that McClanahan's hurt, and you could throw Frammer in there. It's a home run for my team. Garrett Cole on top of my pitching staff, I think, completely rounds it out. It's unbelievable. He didn't even give me that good of a start this week. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do against Brackton next week. But I miss Volpe dearly. Of course, the week after I traded, he pops off finally. Got to get him back eventually. But, Churio and Volpe don't do anything for me this week. I am trying to win a championship, and Cole is probably the best ad I ever could have made recently. So I'm happy to get my favorite pitcher on the Yankees on the team, and Brackton obviously his bats, and especially his prospect bats, got even better by getting Volpe and obviously Churio. Who we'll see if he's a bust or not, because they were fucking around and saying, oh, he might strike out too much, but Churio is a top 2 to 3 prospect in baseball. So if Brackton wanted this approach to really try to, I guess it was a little bit of a retool, but he's collecting youth, which obviously didn't make a ton of sense with the original Cole trade, but he got his young bats, and I got my top up.
I guess I'll jump in, I guess. I'm going to call it how it is. I'm very perplexed of this move from Brackton's point of view. I'll talk about Jamie and Jon Heite's point of view first before I kind of give my little spiel on Brackton. I'm sorry, Brackton, but I'm a straight shooter. I call it how it is. Jamie, obviously, we've been saying, he's had a lot of pitching injuries. He hasn't been able to make the starts a lot of weeks. He'll float between 8 to 9 every week. And if you truly want to contend, you got to hit that start minimum. Obviously, Garrett Cole is an amazing pitcher. As much as I feel like he's been zapped of any personality because of that fucking team in New York. But he's still a great pitcher regardless, and he's obviously one of the 3 to 5 best pitchers in all of baseball. And I get it; it's a tough sell, but you do pick up Bobby Miller, who's you get pitching depth. Bobby Miller's a very good young arm. Gavin Williams is very high on Gavin Williams. Bryce Miller's more hit and miss, but as a third pitcher, getting a net positive of 2 pitchers, even for a guy like Garrett Cole, if you have the hitting to compensate, it's not the worst deal. I understand from James' point of view. And Jon Heite's point of view, I get it. Jackson Churio is not going to play until 2020, late 2024, probably, maybe even later. I could be wrong. Maybe he gets on an accelerated path. He's definitely not playing this year, and I probably won't start opening day for Milwaukee next year. So bare minimum, we're about a year out away from Jackson Churio actually being an impact player. And even then, he can struggle as it happens. And then Anthony Volpe, obviously he was struggling this year. He's gotten better this week, but he did play the A's, so could have just had a nice little streak. But obviously the trade makes sense for Jon Heite. You're a competing team. You want to get, if you can get a top 5 pitcher for no major talents. I guess Volpe was, well, I guess no, you had him on your bench, or your prospect.
I never called them up.
Yeah, never called him up. So getting a top, elite pitcher for no major assets is an automatic win. So, but from Brackton, he was quietly building up a pretty good pitching staff. So he had McClanahan, the Millers, Gavin Williams, Bieber, Bryce Elder, he stinks, but, he was producing. Dane Dunning, Ranger Suarez, Josiah Gray. He had pieces there. I get it. Garrett Cole's very... And if he would have done the Millers and Gavin Williams or Garrett Cole, I would have been like, okay, Gavin Williams is really good, Bobby Miller's really good, but will they ever hit Garrett Cole's ceiling? Probably not. And you could always just get, high teens, low 20s point per game pitchers for a couple of assets. I don't get flipping Garrett Cole for Jackson Chourio and Volpe. I get it. They're very young, hot and up-and-coming guys with a lot of name value. But Braxton traded away Jackson Chourio a couple of weeks ago for Shane Bieber. Did he regret that deal? It looks like he did, but a bit of a maybe buyer's remorse. I just feel like, especially if you're in Braxton's spot, I just don't understand trading away, trying to get Chourio back, especially for Garrett Cole. I'll be honest, if he said Garrett Cole was available for trade, I think he would have gotten more for this. I would have thrown my name out there, and I would have at least given him Jordan Walker plus, and no offense, Jon Heite, I think that would have been better than what you offered.
Maybe.
Definitely maybe, but, I'm saying, I think if you kind of would have seen this play out, if you wanted to get rid of Garrett Cole and get more depth or prospects or whatever, I understand that. I just think he kind of sold himself short on this one. But yeah, I don't know. I always feel bad because Braxton's one of my good friends. I always feel like whenever he takes 2 steps forward, he takes 2 steps back, and he's kind of stuck in the middle every time. We'll see how he goes from here. I felt like this was kind of compensating for when he traded away Chourio for Shane Bieber a few weeks ago. But yeah, I'll let you guys speak. I kind of gave my little spiel, but Tita, Conner, if you have anything to add, you can talk.
Yeah, I think it was, spur of the moment, rash, but in his point of view, I can see. With age guys, he just built on age, and I think it's really hard, to construct a dynasty team when you're so worried about guys turning 29. Whereas baseballers, for the most part, they have a ton of good years left, even when they hit 30. You're thinking, there's just a discount on guys because of age, and their price is going to probably, for the most part, not equal. You're not going to have to pay as much for older guys who are going to have just as good a production as younger guys. I see why he did it, in his point of view. I do think he could have held. I do think he could have waited a little bit and maybe got a lot more for Cole. In the meantime, Jon Heite, he gathered those assets to trade them. I don't think he ever wanted to trade Volpe. I offered Heite about 10 assets before the season started for Volpe, like 4 or 5 first-round picks and some other stuff. But like I said, I get it from everybody's point of view, and I get it from Jamie's point of view as well. The thing is, I think Jamie's a really good owner. I just think, maybe, he's different. He might be a patient guy when maybe, I say he shouldn't be patient, but guess what? That's why he owns his team, and I own mine. So, at the end of the day, like I said, I get it for all people involved. Maybe they could have got more, but, it is what it is.
I actually take a different stance than Tita here. Heite has the most clarity with what happened. He traded 2 top 10 prospects for, in my opinion, the number 1 pitcher that's healthy in baseball. So, but the other 2 sides of the coin don't seem to fit the timelines. Can the Tarpons deal with the inconsistencies that these young arms will have, or will they get flipped for more Aaron Nola types where you know what you're getting? Shane McClanahan could be a target there, Zach Wheeler, just throwing names out. And then for Braxton, obviously, there's been a little bit skewed towards hitting, so trading a number 1 pitcher for 2 top hitting prospects just doesn't seem to make sense. I'm okay with the price point, but will Churio stay on the team, or if he's really committed to going for a playoff spot, will those assets move to bolster the pitching, especially since it's kind of hard to come by younger players that can do that?
I will say, the Aaron Nola comment, you're going to go with him. He stinks. I'm kidding, but he kind of is mediocre. But, I mean...
Wait. Hen, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
I do agree that, obviously this was a little bit spur of the moment. We were on Voice. I've been going after Cole for a while. Bracton probably could have gotten more. But, I mean, Churio, top 3 spec in baseball. And obviously, Hen, you might not like Volpe, but he was the top shortstop prospect in baseball going into this year. I felt like, getting 2, like Connor just said, top 10 specs. Obviously, you probably could have offered more if the time had come, but I don't think, it obviously didn't make a ton of sense for Bracton. I'm not arguing that. I just took the deal that I was able to get, but I don't think from a value standpoint it wasn't as bad as what it could have been. But, obviously he could have probably gotten a little bit more if he just held out. But I still think Churio and Volpe are still 2, elite level, A-list prospects.
Well, another thing, and we'll move on because we got a lot to talk about. Bracton lost 3 pitchers in this deal. I mean, he lost, regardless of how you spin it, pitching, we say this, and pitching is pitching's a lot. Obviously you need good hitters as well, but if you can get good quality pitching, you're probably going to be in the top of the league just based on that alone. And he gave up 3 quality arms and got none back. He had a net loss of -3 pitching, which when you're trying to compete with myself, Cody, Jon Heite, Tita, Jamie, anyone in the playoff picture, you're going to want to have that pitching depth. And I get it. Jackson Churio and Anthony Volpe are elite specs. But would you... I don't know if I would do this. I don't know if I would give up 3 pitchers to get them. That's just me. I am in a different spot than Bracton, but obviously we'll see how that goes from there. Tita, do you want to talk about... We can go over quickly. Do you want to talk about your JP France Gunnar Hoglund trade? I'm trying to hit a lot of the main things, but I know you're on the call right now, and I want to give you your space.
Yeah, no, go ahead. That's a low on a total pole deal.
Okay, I didn't want to leave you high and dry.
No,
but okay. So we're gonna head to the next big trade. So between 2 members here on the pod right now. Tita gets Jose Altuve and Jordan Montgomery. Jon Heite gets Christian Walker. Tita, I'll start with you. Give me your perspective of this trade and your thoughts, and then Jon Heite can go afterwards, and Connor, you can kind of just give it all quick thoughts.
Yeah, Christian Walker is a guy that's very underrated in this league, probably because he's 32. But Heite had asked about him for a while, and I ended up having a glut of first base types, and I was looking to upgrade my second base, and so, like I said, at the end of the day, we kind of talked about it. I'm big on Jordan Montgomery. So, for me, it was simply, hey, rest of the year, who's going to outscore who, and I think for me, where Altuve wasn't starting for Heite at second base, he'd be an impact second baseman for me, and I get the starting pitcher who I kind of like Jordan Montgomery, not as a top 3 or 4 starting pitcher, but like a starting pitcher 5 type. So it just kind of made sense to go ahead and flip Walker, who had a really, really, really good season up to that point. And I think he had a really good 3-4 games this week for Heite. So just kind of made sense for both of us to go ahead and do that deal. And I don't think either one of us regret what we got.
Yeah, it made a ton of sense. Again, Altuve, I wasn't really playing. I also have been wary with him. He's been battling a ton of injuries. So I was kind of getting tired of that, to be honest, even though I know he's still, one of the best second baseman in a long time. Montgomery as well. For a while, he was pitching kind of bad, and now he's on this insane hot streak. I know what he is, watching him as a former Yankee. So, Christian Walker, like Tita said, was a guy I was looking at for a while. He's a top 20 bat right now in all of baseball. I just like running him out as a util bat, and I'm sort of in a pitcher logjam with all these dudes coming back. So I was never going to play Montgomery once I am able to get all those guys. So I think it made a ton of sense for both sides. Tita got some depth and some good scoring this week. And Walker kind of had a bad weekend, but had a good 4 games. So I'm excited for it for both sides, honestly. And hopefully I don't have to play against Altuve anytime soon.
I just love this trade on multiple fronts. I think earlier in the season, Heite was aggressive in coming getting replacements for some significant injuries. Aaron Judge, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, obviously. So it was time for him to sell some assets. So he got traded a nice 2-for-1. Christian Walker's just been great. All the players here, I think, are over 30. So it's kind of Tita and Heite kind of have the "hey, look at us" gift where they're clearly winning with players over 30 that Braxton might put in a nursing home. But this definitely provides the depth that Heite wants and some of the upfront scoring and more options for Tita to use.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a pretty solid trade on both fronts. You know, Tita gets an arm in Jordan Montgomery. Like you said, you know, and obviously not like an elite, you know, SP1, SP2 kind of a guy, but, you know, a nice consistent guy. Maybe he'll get you, you know, he'll get you like low 20s, high teens. Maybe he'll surprise you and get a nice little 30-piece or like a high 20s game. And then Jose Altuve, you know, obviously he's still one of the best for second basemen in a position that's really lacking, especially this year in fantasy. So getting a guy like that. And Christian Walker, I feel like it's now kind of people are starting to realize how good he is. I remember I was actually trying to go after him for as long as like beginning of, you know, the offseason when Scoop still had him. Obviously that never transpired, and then obviously Paul Goldschmidt came to the fray. But Christian Walker, always a good, reliable first baseman to know, especially with Anthony Rizzo, you know, kind of being dog shit like the whole Yankees team except for Aaron Judge and I guess Garrett Cole pitching wise. But you know, obviously you needed a first baseman there. Christian Walker for that price, very solid get, if I do say so myself. We're gonna skip another trade. If you guys want to talk about it, please, you can talk about it. The next trade I want to go to is Yu Darvish and Welbin Francesa for Lance Lynn and Luis Severino. Jamie adds a bit more pitching depth. Tita gets Yu Darvish, who didn't start for him because he got the flu. Tita, I'll let you get started. What were your thoughts on this trade?
For me, it was trying to get rid of a guy like Lynn. I was just trying to basically upgrade starting pitcher. I know that Yu's 35 years old. Hadn't been great this year, but I do think if you look at all three of those pitchers, I think it's a very, very overwhelming choice that I think Darvish would be the best pitcher out of that three. So, and then actually Francesca's a guy that is kind of tearing it up in the DSL for the Indians. Been really impressive. I ended up moving him a little bit later. But he gave me another minors piece. You went from having a 2-start week this week, supposedly, at Pittsburgh and at Cincinnati, and because he caught the flu, he had a no-start week. So that was good. But I don't think I missed anything from Severino. I think he had minus 16, and Lynn, who I don't think he did much. So I'm fine with it.
So yeah, I'll give my thoughts real quick. If you guys want to interject afterwards, you can. I think you did get the better arm here in Yu Darvish. He's really been, I think, like internally, you know, consistent as a high-end pitcher for a while now. Also, he's on, you know, the Padres haven't been as, you know, good, but if they turn things around and they start winning some more of his starts, that obviously will help you out in the long run. Luis Severino, I've said before, the guy is terrible, not good, so getting rid of him is fine. Lance Lynn, he has his moments, but he's very hot and cold, not really consistent, especially when you're fighting for a playoff spot and every week matters at this point. It can get pretty aggravating because you never know if you're going to get 35 points or 5 points from him. So we are going to head to the next big trade. Tita, Tita, do you want to talk about AJ Puck, or do you want me to slide it? Because I think I might go with this next trade.
Yeah, go ahead, go.
Okay. Another trade between two podcast members. Jon Heite and Tita once again back at it. Emmanuel Valdez and a third-round pick for Yusei Kikuchi. I mean, if you guys want to talk about that a little bit, obviously not a huge deal, but Yusei Kikuchi I know has a lot of name value and, has had a good pass before.
Yeah, I mean, Tita came to me with this trade. He said it was an easy accept. I agree with him because a part of my pitching log jam with Cole and Evaldi the last 2 weeks and Kelly was looking to trade him anyway. I knew Kikuchi was going to fall back down to earth after 2 amazing starts the last 2 weeks. I know he didn't do that well today. I think he still got a lot of upside this season. Again, he was a throw-in in the original Bieber trade I had with Braxton. So, I mean, getting Valdez, he was a pretty good Boston spec. I know he's been battling some injury and also a third-round pick. It made sense. I think Tita's going to get more out of Kikuchi outside of a bad start this week. But, yeah, I was happy with it.
Yeah, I was too. I mean, for me, it was just, I don't think you can ever have too many okay, at least, arms. And to me, Kikuchi is an okay arm. He's at worst a matchup guy, but you can throw him out there and he can get you positive points for the most part with the potential to get you 30 plus points depending on, the day. So to me, it was just kind of an easy one for both of us. He had the depth to get rid of it. I wanted to kind of add another arm. And so, like I said, I don't think in this league or in any league especially, you can have enough starting pitching.
Connor, you want to add anything or you want to move on? If you don't, it's fine.
Yeah, I think it's a fair trade. Not too much to add here.
Okay. Next trade. So that was just one day to kind of put things into perspective how big, especially the beginning of this week, was. But the next deal, big deal. Tita gets Dylan Cease for Jack Flaherty, Jet Williams, Dalton Rushing, Emmanuel Rodriguez, Cedane Rafaela, Cole Young, and his first-round pick. Tita, I feel like I've been going to you first, but I mean, this trade involves you, so I guess I have to. But Tita, what do you think is the, obviously this is a big move to get a big-time arm. What was your thought process behind this?
My thought process was it was quantity over quality. Could some of those guys pan out? Yeah. I don't think anybody was above 40 in the rank of pipeline. Could be wrong. But I looked at it like, the one that was the most painful to get rid of for me was Cole Young. I'm a big Cole Young guy. I think Cole Young's really good. And to me, he could be the one to bite me in the tail out of that deal. But, at the time, and I still think this, I think Cease's could be. It was all about a flip for me. I wanted to major league pieces, and I felt like I could get those pieces a little better with Cease than I could those guys right there as a whole. And I kind of did later on. So that was my thinking.
I'll jump in. Obviously, like I said, I agree with you. It's kind of reminiscent of some of the older deals we used to see. I mean, it was before we were in the league, but, I always heard stories of a lot of these big quantity prospect deals for, big-time pitchers. Obviously, you didn't give up as much as I've seen in other, we've seen in the past, but obviously you're giving up 5 prospects, a pick, and then Jack Flaherty for Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease is someone who's been kind of on the upswing. He had a rough start to the year, but he's been getting better. The prospect I actually think I'm probably the highest on here. Cole Young's obviously very solid. Emmanuel Rodriguez from the Twins I think is very good. He's been killing it, and he's been killing it in A+ ball, high A ball. So he's someone, obviously he's still a few years away, so he's not impact guy right now. But he's a bat I really like, and I forget when you originally got him. I was like kind of toying the idea, but I have a lot of outfield depth, so it's not like a urgent need for me. But he's someone I've been kind of watching closely, seeing he's been doing. I really like him, but like you said, if you can flip Dylan Cease for more major assets, or if you can really start finding his form again, I think this is a good deal for you. But I think this is a nice deal for both sides. Okay. Tito, once again, we're going to you. It's like the old days. You're wheeling and dealing once again, but we're going to go. So you got Carlos Estevez from Homco for Kevin Parada, Luis Guampia, and Jon Heite's 2025 second-round pick.
Yeah, kind of been on the week of trying to get closers. I just feel like closers in this league have an insane amount of value. Not an insane, but, if you get a closer, he gets 2 Ks, has a clean inning, he's getting you 14 to 16 points. And in a matchup, man, in a week, if you can get 2 or 3 of those, you're getting 35 to 48 points from your closer. It changes matchups. And so that was my thinking. Parada, could he be good? Yeah, maybe. Guanipa's a guy in the lower Braves minors who a lot of people like, but the dude's 17, So, hey, I'm going for it, and we'll see how it shakes out, in 7 years if Guanipa gets up and kills, and so be it. So, but it just kind of made sense, the price for me to do it, and that's why I did it.
Yeah, we'll see if we'll revisit this after the 2028 presidential election, see where Luis Guanipa is after this. But Carlos Estevez was I kind of mentioned this before. I was trying to pick up another closer to really solidify, my bullpen, especially, if I know someone's going to get an off day, I like having that back, like another fourth legitimate closer. I went for Estevez, didn't get him, couldn't agree on the right price. I went also after Duvall, who I also got traded. We'll talk about him later. I ended up settling, which is a great transition, for David Robertson. Not a huge deal. I got him for Gabriel Gonzalez and my second-round pick this year. David Robertson, obviously still killing it at his advanced age. I think he's 37, 38, something like that. I mean, the Mets stink, so he doesn't have a whole lot of save opportunities, but, as an nearly 8-point per game reliever, or at 8-point per game reliever, he's someone, especially if he gets traded in real life, which I think the Mets should trade, and I think he will get traded. He'll have a lot more save opportunities, or he'll get a lot of more hold opportunities as a setup guy, in that 8th inning role, which I think, will only help him out. I was kind of trying to foresee a real-life David Robertson trade, so if he gets traded to a contender, I can capitalize that and jump on that before he actually gets traded. Gabriel Gonzalez. Oh, what were you saying, Tita?
Oh, I didn't say anything.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant something. But Gabriel Gonzalez, solid minor leaguer for the Mariners. I think he has a lot of potential, but, I'll give him, obviously if I'm trying to win now, get someone I'll risk losing a guy like Gonzalez, and then I have other picks in this year's draft to kind of, compensate for that. So, the next trade we're going to go over, a kind of a bit of a precursor. It's another big trade, but Dave and Cody, I think this was the first trade we've talked about that doesn't involve anyone on the pod tonight, which is kind of wild. But Dave gets Miguel Vargas and Mick Abel for Cody gets Walker Buehler. If anyone wants to kind of start and give their thoughts and wants to jump in, they can do so.
Yeah,
I think
sorry, T. No, T, you go.
I think it was a great deal for both of them. I think Walker Buehler's probably going to come back later in the year. I don't know if it'll be in time for playoffs in this league, but I think in the long term, that guy is proven to be a fantasy stud. But I also think, too, that Mick Abel, who is a high upside Phillies prospect, starting pitcher, trying to figure out his niche in it. And then Miguel Vargas, who is in the majors now, a little inconsistent, but high upside. I just think it made perfect sense for both parties, actually.
Yeah, I have to agree with Tita. When I saw this trade originally, I think when Dave joined, or maybe before him, I had checked in about Buehler because of the injury. He is an ace when he's healthy, and Cody got an ace, and he's got him ready at the wing whenever he comes back. So I love it for him. Love it for Dave as well, getting Mick Abel, Miguel Vargas, former yard goat and beach dog. He's been passed around a little bit. Vargas doesn't really do anything for Cody this year. Does a lot for Dave, I think, for the future. He's got a ton of upside outside of the inconsistency, so win-win for both.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a high-risk, kind of a high-reward move for both teams. I mean, obviously Walker Buehler coming off Tommy John, you never know how a pitcher's going to react to that. But, like you guys said, before he was a stud pitcher. I mean, obviously always hovering, or at least bare minimum, he's a high teens pitcher. But when he's hot, he's somewhere in the mid to high 20s. And if you can obviously get a pitcher like that for just Miguel Vargas and Mick Abel, that's obviously huge if you're Cody, even if, this is a move that's going to affect more the 2024 season than the 2023 season. And then looking towards Dave, as a Phillies fan, I'm not as high actually on Mick Abel. I feel like a lot of his ranking, in terms of his prospect rankings, kind of just built off of name value. He really kind of hasn't taken that next step. I feel like he's been kind of, plateauing where he is right now. He obviously has a lot of stuff. He's got good heat to him, but I'm still not completely sold on him as a prospect, even as a Phillies fan. So we'll see. But he does, like you guys say, have a lot of potential. And then Miguel Vargas, a bit inconsistent, but if this is a guy who could pan out for Dave in the future, someone who could play that middle infield for the Dodgers, who really don't have any consistent options in there right now. Once he gets going, he could be a staple in that lineup, and we know how good the Dodgers are. So even if he's slightly above average, just being in that offense will give him a lot of offensive opportunities for RBIs, hits, runs, etc. So the big, I guess you can argue the Garrett Cole trade was the biggest trade, but I maybe I'm biased, but I think this might be the biggest trade we've seen this week. I, myself, get Spencer Strider and Bracton's 2025 third for Jordan Walker, Logan Webb, Mason Wynn, and Robert Gasser. I'll start things off because this is my trade. I think it was kind of a badly kept secret that I was probably going to shop Jordan Walker for an ace. Obviously very talented player, especially since he's been called up. He's been much improved, and he's been a very consistent bat. But like I said before, there's only so many chefs you can put in the kitchen, and my outfield right now is just, there's not a lot of spots for him. I mean, even at third base, Jose Ramirez has been locking it down, and he's been very consistent. Obviously, he's, older, but he's still doing his thing. One of the best hitters in baseball. But in the outfield, you have Soto, you have Corbin Carroll, you have Tucker, who's really kind of starting to get things going once again. Lane Thomas just seems to be an absolute dog. So there really wasn't a spot, maybe that last utility spot for Jordan Walker, but in my opinion, I saw Jon Heite get Garrett Cole, and I was like, I have to get an ace here. And Spencer Strider is a legitimate ace, only at 24, playing on that Braves team. If he keeps striking out batters and he keeps playing on the Atlanta Braves, barring an injury, he should be a dominant pitcher for the next few years. So this isn't just a 2023 move. This is a move that can benefit me for the next few years as well. I mentioned I was trying to use Jordan Walker to acquire any sort of ace. I was in talks for Shane McClanahan with Bracton for a while, but I was really kind of apprehensive because I saw that back injury. McClanahan obviously went on the IL because of it, and we don't know what's going to happen because of that. I was in talks with Hamko about Yuri Perez potentially, but he wanted to hold on to him because obviously he's more of a rebuilding team, doesn't want to give up a future stud ace. So, I was in talks with Cody. Cody said, what can I get for Jordan Walker? I gave him a list of players that include Strider. He said, okay, I can include Strider. So I thought I gave a fair price back. Logan Webb's obviously a very good pitcher. Not as good as Strider, but still a very good pitcher in his own right. Mason Wynn, solid prospect. If he gets his hitting, if he works on his hitting, he'll be an everyday shortstop for the Cardinals. And Robert Gasser, I know someone Cody has wanted for a while. But I think this is a trade that I think I obviously came out with the better player, but I think Cody got fair value for Spencer Strider.
Yeah, I want to talk about it first just because I want to give a little bit of background. I mean, so far, and you could probably agree, with the way things have been shaping up, my team, your team, Cody, Jamie, a lot of the top teams, not a lot of trades between us. I think we have to kind of ride a delicate line between, making each other better in trades, and at least, me and Cody really haven't been able to trade much at all during the season. We've done a lot in the off season. And we haven't really done a lot as well. I was very surprised by this trade. I know you were shopping Jordan Walker, I didn't think Cody was going to trade Spencer Strider. I mean, ever. I know it was his profile picture. He's probably the best pitcher in the National League. I'm a big Gallen enthusiast. I'd probably still take Strider over Gallen. I understand, being able to get, Jordan Walker, second best rookie in the NL after Corbin Carroll. Logan Webb is still a stud. And, I know Mason Wynn is more of a defensive prospect. He's got some pop, and Robert Gasser as well. But keeping that in mind, this is a trade I can see later on if, you're in the playoffs and it's Hen versus Cody, and it's, potentially Strider versus Webb. Obviously, everyone would lean with Strider in that one. So, again, it's just very interesting to see Cody trade Strider. I didn't think it was going to happen. He's such a dominant pitcher. But, again, he did get fair value from him. He got a haul. But, Hen, who was kind of, I'm not going to say lacking an ace, he had a ton of very good two elite pitchers with guys like Mitch Keller, who kind of tailed off. He's been back. Stroman's been great. But guys like Scherzer really haven't been there. Andrew Abbott now has turned into an ace. But, now with Strider, his pitching is absolutely ridiculous. Cody's pitching, I think, at the same time, getting McClanahan later in the week, again, getting it back, I think makes us better. I think without getting McClanahan back, I think it really kind of took a hit to his pitching. Even though Webb is still a dog, I'd still prefer Strider. But, it makes sense for both sides now. But, getting Spencer Strider, still the best player in the deal. So, but I think there's still a lot of time left to remain. Jordan Walker could still go on an insane streak like he has so far. He's just adding more depth to Cody's offense.
Yeah, I agree with everything he's been saying.
Connor, you can go.
We talk about smart downgrades a lot in this league, so I'm really curious how Logan Webb is going to compare to Spencer Strider for Cody. But yeah, I think this is a pretty interesting deal. I'd say since Hen's got the best player, at least in the short term, I think that's going to really pay off. But this is an interesting one. Glad it came together, and hopefully it works out.
Yeah, I kind of want to say a couple of other things before we move on. John, it's actually interesting. Like, I agree with you. Like, especially me and you, we don't really trade a lot. And, obviously it's weird trading with, like, people you're trying to compete with because you, like you said, you want to walk that fine line between, making your team better but not making your opposition better as well. A lot of the, I feel like I'm one of the more conservative GMs. It's probably the most I've traded since the offseason, like, in a week, I should say. But it's very interesting, though, because the the team I always trade with, or a team I trade with a lot, has been Cody. Just looking at, like, the moves we've made together, I got Bo Bichette from him, Juan Soto, Yordan Alvarez. I know those two were in the offseason, though. But we made the Sandy Alcantara trade. We made the Spencer Strider trade. So it's very interesting that, I don't remember the last time we've made a trade, John. It's been a while. I don't know. I think the last time I traded with Jamie was the deal to get Sandy. I could be wrong. Maybe we made another minor deal that I'm forgetting. I don't think I've ever traded with Bry. Maybe I did. It was a minor deal. Tita I've made a couple moves with. Same with Paul. But I'm either trading with the kind of teams that are selling, or I've somehow made big deals with Cody. So it is very interesting you made that point. And then also the thing about the ace, I agree with you. I haven't really had a dominant ace. I tried that with Sandy Alcantara. He hasn't been anything close to where he was last year. Max Scherzer was someone else I wanted to get, especially for the short term. That kind of bit me in the ass, especially given who I gave up in that deal, but we won't talk about that. Logan Webb, I thought maybe could be like a borderline ace. Obviously good, but he's not like elite. He's not in that upper echelon, so I felt like this is finally the time I got a legitimate ace on my team. There's other players I could see becoming them, maybe especially like Andrew Abbott's been killing it. I still have G-Rod, Painter in the prospects, but they obviously won't kind of hit their stride till later. But I think I finally got my ace, which I desperately think I need, especially if I'm going to keep up with the Joneses. So, John, like he alluded a bit earlier, the next big trade we're going to talk about, Cody gets Shane McClanahan, Bryce Elder, and Vinny Pasquantino for Vlad Guerrero Jr., Jose Barrios, and Brooks Lee. John, I guess since you kind of alluded to this trade earlier, I'll give you the floor to start.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat it again. I think Cody got put in a worse spot, at least with with pitching purposes from the last trade, just because, Strider is obviously an upgrade over Webb, even though he got Walker and everything. But he immediately, if there was any doubt he didn't have any, problems, he was able to fix it, I think, in this trade. I know McClanahan is hurt, but when McClanahan comes back, he's the best pitcher in the American League. So, you trade away the best pitcher in the National League, and you get back a guy that he originally had traded away. I think it was to get Gunner or something at one point. But I know Bryce Elder, he doesn't have a ton of name value, but he's been really good this year. I think he's actually, an all-star, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Vinny Pasquantino's one of the best young first basemen in baseball. I know he's out for the season, but similar to Walker Buehler, Cody's loading up for next year as well, and the chance he can't win this year potentially. If he doesn't end up winning it all, he's more than set already for next year with those moves. In terms of Bragton, I know Vlad's his guy. He got him back. Jose Barrios, I'm not big on. I know he's been great this year, but I think he could tail off at a moment's notice. Brooks Lee, I think, was definitely a good get, though. I think it makes sense for his prospects to add another bat, even though I know he traded him away. But I don't love it for Bragton. I love it, I think, a lot more for Cody for what he got. Just because I think Vlad, for some reason, he hasn't really been himself this year. I know he's pulling out stats with him and Cole. But, until recently, Vlad really hasn't been doing a whole lot compared to his previous standards. And Cody, lost Strider, brought back McClanahan. He's more than fine. And, he's ready to go because now when you face him in the playoffs, it won't be Strider. It'll be, he's McClanahan. So I think Cody's more than fine.
Tita or Connor, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think he's, I think Vinny P is a little bit underrated so far in our league for what he brings to the table when he's healthy. I think he's a player who is still, takes some time to develop. But overall, I think the trade was good for both. I think Cody ended up solving a little bit of what, like Heite said, what his major concerns were going to be after Dylan earlier. I will say that Heite called McClanahan the best pitcher in the American League, and that would mean that he was better than Shohei. Is McClanahan a better pitcher than Shohei, you think?
Well,
no.
At the same time, you can argue, Cole, Framber, obviously McClanahan. Coming into the season, I think McClanahan was the consensus. I know with the injury or whatever. I think they're like 1A, 1B, honestly, when healthy. The way Shohei's been pitching, it's hard to argue against him right now.
Yeah.
I think Cole and Framber are better pitchers than Shohei when they're on. Obviously Shohei's, the best player in the universe right now overall, but I still probably lean the other three as pitchers.
Yeah. I see that. At the end of the day, like I said, it all, Bryce Elder's a guy who, as a Braves fan, I see him, and he doesn't wow you with anything. I've not been a huge fan of him, but, the guy just puts quality starts up day in, day out, it seems like. And, he is an all-star, so it kind of was like, I just think overall it benefited Cody. I think he got a little more out of it. But, like I said, I see the fairness and why both guys did it.
Yeah,
I'm going to echo what Fred here. I think it's an even trade, but Bracton's already leaning towards hitting, especially after the Cole deal. So trading two more arms Jose Barrios is nothing to laugh at, but moving Shane McClanahan and Bryce Elder's point up for performance, it feels like Cody did a better fit for a need here.
Yeah. This is another trade. Obviously Cody, you assumed once he got rid of Strider there was something else he had in his back pocket, or he was going to go after getting another ace, because he knows, you give up a pitcher like that, you're not just going to mule over and not do anything about it. He was obviously going to be aggressive and make a move about it. We'll see. Shane McClanahan, obviously, when he's good, he's obviously one of the best pitchers, but, obviously he's dealing with a back injury right now, which is, you don't know what's up, could be out, could be out only for a couple of weeks, but he could extend. You never really know, especially with the way kind of the Rays are more conservative in their kind of injury and pitcher management. Never really, the Rays never really treat their pitchers going deep. They always like them stopping after 2 ways through the lineup. They never want to get him to the third way. So that kind of limits how many points he can get. But he's still an elite pitcher, and he's still an ace regardless. Bryce Elder, I've said before, I think, he's a regression candidate waiting to happen. He's on the Braves, so he'll always have value just because even if he, isn't, wow, he isn't, amazing, they'll probably win his starts. But I think there could be regression coming on that front. But he's scoring right now, so I guess that's all that matters. And Vinny Pasquantino, I agree with you, Tita. I feel like him being, whether you think he's the second or third piece, him being not even the main piece in a deal, getting a first baseman like that back, I know he's not playing, but we've seen the pop he has. We've seen the power he has. He's still young. If he can come back from injury and be close to what he was, I think this is a very sneaky good pickup for Cody. And for Braxton, I'm higher on Vlad than you are, Jon Heite. I think, he's obviously, he wasn't what he was a couple of years ago, but I still think he's a very good player. You look at kind of what his StatCast data is. He's obviously very good. He hits the ball hard. Just hasn't kind of found his footing yet. But my thinking here is first baseman's a very saturated position. You look at some of the top guys, in terms of first baseman scoring. Obviously you have the top dogs like Freeman, Olsen, Goldschmidt, Arias, who has first base eligibility. But then you look down, Christian Walker is 6.5 point per game bad. Justin Turner's a 6.5 point per game bad. Yandy Diaz is almost a 7 point per game bad. Nathaniel Lowe is a 6 point per game bad. Andrew Vaughn's around 5.5, 6. Josh Naylor's 6. That's similar to what Vlad's doing right now. And I get it. Some of those guys are older, especially when you look at Justin Turner, who's 38. Christian Walker, who's 32. Yandy Diaz is 31. And Vlad's obviously still, 24 years old. I think if you really wanted a first baseman upgrade, you could have gotten one of those guys for, let's say, a top 100 spec and a pick. I know Braxton doesn't have picks, but I'm just saying hypothetically. But I don't know if giving up a true ace, especially when you kind of have depleted your pitching staff for Shane McClanahan for Vlad was the best. Obviously, Vlad can go back to his MVP form and kind of compensate for that, but losing pitching is always a bad deal. And I do like Jose Barrios. I think he's projects to be much better long term than Bryce Elder. And then Brooks Lee's a very solid prospect. I don't know where his position is in that Twins team, especially they still have Correa at shortstop. Royce Lewis has been better, especially recently. He's kind of finally starting to kind of find his groove, but even with all the injuries. So it'll be interesting, but we'll see how it plays out for both squads here. And so heading over now to, a couple days pass by. We head over. Tita gets Luis Arias, so Braxton goes from doesn't mean Vlad anymore. Trades Luis Arias. Tita gets Luis Arias and Brett Beatty for Dylan Cease. I'll let you get the floor, Tita.
Well, it's kind of what I wanted to do. I felt like my pitching was okay. I felt like, the main reason that I wanted to get Cease was, he's in that 27-year-old age range, so he's not old. He's still got that appeal. And then, he has been better. But, I don't feel like I could have gotten these guys with the haul that I gave for Cease. So, my thinking is Arias is a solid, if unspectacular, player. He's hitting 385, 388. And he puts up points. I will say that in the points league, I think a guy like him is golden. He's on pace for over 1,000 points, which will play. And then, my thinking was, okay, let's get Beatty because Beatty's going to be flippable for a starting pitcher. Originally, that was my thought. But then, I ended up flipping him for something else. But kind of my thinking was, hey, let's take the bat. The bat's always safer. The bat always plays. I felt like my starting pitching was, I don't have a bunch of studs. I have a bunch of matchup pieces, and so, hey, I was like, let's just go all in and embrace it with that. Let's try to get my bats a little bit better. So that was kind of my thinking.
Yeah, I'll add real quick, Hen, for this trade. Obviously, Bragdon lost a shit ton of pitching this week. We've talked about it enough. I actually don't hate this move from him. I actually kind of like it. Dylan Cease, I think, is going to be good the rest of the season. I think that slow start, I don't think that's going to be a thing anymore. I still think he's the most trustworthy pitcher in the world. And, compared to what he gave up, I would still trust Cole, Gavin Williams potentially. I know he's only a couple of starts, but the way he's been pitching. But Dylan Cease, is an ace. He needs an ace. This does not solve his pitching problems. We'll talk later. There's still a lot of work to be done. I know they're all young and quote unquote elite or soon to be elite, but for next week against me, I'd rather face Cease obviously than McClanahan or Cole when he had him for 10 minutes. But for Tita, Luis Arias, again, not flashy at all, but a ton of, just consistent production. We'll always get that. I know Tita's offense, and he can agree with me. When his offense is on, it is on. But some of those dudes I know are a little bit home run or bust, especially I think outfield. And I know you're. Yep. So you have Arias in there. It doesn't freaking matter what's going on in the outfield. He's going to get you, 6 to 12 points each night, by getting 2 to 3 hits. So consistency, and then Brett Beatty as well, and we talked about already. So I actually do like this deal for both sides. It makes a ton of sense, and it's on Bragdon's track to replenishing some of the elite pitching that he had for about a couple of days.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, Bragdon obviously needed the pitching depth. Dylan Cease is someone we mentioned before is kind of coming back on the upswing. He didn't have a need for Luis Arias. You can get him off the Tita. And like you said, I feel like, in a points league, someone who will always get you at least 1 or 2 hits every night or every day or every game, whatever, just kind of consistent, 6 points, 7 points, 8, 12, who can always you can always pencil him in to at least get you some points. He's not like a home run or bust guy, is always huge. Brett Beatty, obviously, jury's still out on him. The Mets have been kind of a shit show all around, so I don't know how much you can really pin that on Brett Beatty, but, was a former top prospect going into the season, has had his moments, but we'll see how that plays out, and then Bragdon, like I said, needs the pitching. So, Tita, we're going to talk about this move. If you want to talk about the previous move as a precursor, I understand that, but the move I wanted to focus on was you getting Camilo Doval for Brooks Lee, Brett Beatty, Cody's 2025 third, and Dave's 2026 fourth. Brooks Lee you got from Byron Buxton, Clark Schmidt, Jon Heite's third this year, my third next year, and then Connor's second in 26.
Yeah, my whole purpose when I got Beatty was to flip him for another pitcher. I was thinking a starting pitcher. I've been after Camilo Doval for a while. I could never get kind of close to what Scott wanted. I kind of told him, hey, I'll give you Lee and Beatty. He said, it's not really enough. Add in those 2 picks. And I'm like, sure. I have no qualms about doing that. And so that's kind of, was it a little rich for Doval? Maybe. But I do think that Doval is one of the top 5 at worst closers in this league. And then, like I said, I traded Buxton. Probably traded him at the wrong time. It's just more out of a frustration trade of him. But I thought, too, at the same time, what I got rid of, Buxton, Clark Schmidt, a bunch of – I tried to dress it up with those picks for a top 20 spec. At that time, like I said, Buxton really wasn't playing for me. I think Clark Schmidt loses his spot when Rodon and Cortez come back, maybe. And so I feel like I gave a bunch of spare parts in Buxton for a top 20. And like I said, my whole goal, flipping that for a pitcher, like I said, originally it was going to be a starting pitcher. It wasn't going to be Brooks Lee. I kind of like him. It was going to end up being Beatty. But like I said, at the end of the day, it kind of just worked out how it worked out. And I'm very, very happy to have Doval because, like I said, I think he's a dude. And so I'm all about getting as many dudes as you can.
And one thing I think we got to mention too is it's not exactly the trade that's later on in the week with my Munoz trade, but I mean it's setting the price for what elite young closers could be going for. I mean, on paper, I think Scott got a haul, but it makes a ton of sense for Tita getting that good of a closer. Also making sure that teams like me, Hen, Cody also didn't get him. I know a lot of us were calling up Scott. You know, the price was a little rich, but you know, Tita said, "Fuck it, I'm getting my guy. I'm getting a dude." And I think, you know, Duvall at the minimum is also a top 5 closer. The Brooks Lee trade is kind of baffling to me. I mean, Bragdon traded for Buxton, who's old. I know he's tearing the cover off the ball. I kind of hope he keeps him to see that, maybe old people aren't so scary. Because Buxton, you know, when healthy and when buzzing is borderline elite still. But yeah, Clark Schmidt, you know, he had a couple of good starts for the Yankees. But yeah, once those guys come back, I'm not sold on him. He'll probably be moved to the bullpen maybe. And then just the picks as well. I didn't think he'd move on from Brooks Lee that quickly. So a little bit of surprise there. Tita got another dude, a top 20 dude. But yeah, hopefully Buxton stays a lark for a little bit because he is a dog.
Yeah, hopefully Braxton doesn't get scared of the age. But because I think, you know, Buxton, the big thing's always been his health. Like when he's healthy, he's electric. He's been able to stay healthy, but I think it's been a lot of, you know, injury management on the Twins, which really hasn't been able to fully unlock him as much, but he's been able to stay healthy, which has been huge for him. But, I mean, going back to the Vol thing, like you said, Jon Heite, this kind of set the price for getting an elite closer, and he boxed, essentially, you know, the top teams out. I kind of gave up on Doval once I got Robertson. I was like, you know, obviously Doval's better than Robertson, but I wasn't going to trade for a fifth, like, everyday closer, and especially for the price Scott was asking for. I was kind of resigning. I wouldn't you know, die on that hill. I feel like I can kind of use it on other parts, but you know, Brooks Lee's obviously a very talented spec, a spec I've been high on. I had him for a little bit as a beach dog. Brett Beatty, you know, still has that name value, and then a couple of late picks who, you know, maybe they'll turn out to be much, but not really. You know, probably back end of the draft, you're kind of just praying at that point. So Tita picking up 2 elite closers really in the span of this week and kind of limiting one of us from getting one as well. Connor, you have anything to say, or we can move on?
Yeah, so I think on paper, Tita gave up a lot combining the Brooks Lee trade and then moving him for Camilo Doval, but maybe other owners, self-included, could take a lesson from the situational. Tita's always been fearless in trying to maneuver to get the pieces that he wants. One example that always comes to mind is the one-on-one Chris Bryant, Brandon Barriera swap. So, of course, for a lot of teams, value is very important, but I do think that a couple big objectives were achieved, and he paid the price he thought was necessary to do it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it costs a lot to get an elite young arm, even if he's a reliever. But the next trade I want to go to, so like I said, it really, you know, that the first top of the week was electric, and we got a couple more deals I want to talk about before we can head into the previews. We've been on this for a while, but Bragdon gets some more pitching depth, picks up Tarek Skubal and Termar Johnson for Josh Young. So Termar Johnson making his way back over to the Larks. And he sends off Josh Young. Actually, oddly enough, I was texting Jon Heite about this. Bragdon and Dave swapped these players earlier. Dave gave up Young to Bragdon for Termar Johnson. I forget what the actual package went out to. I remember I sent it in Maine as well. But, you know, Bragdon picks up an arm, picks up a Young spec, but he gives up Josh Young in the process. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
I think sorry, Tita, you go.
My bad. I went last time. Your turn.
Okay. he said he made this trade because he got Volpe, and it makes sense. I mean, again, I'm all for now Braxton getting pitching because he needs it very badly. I mean, Josh Young, he has been one of the best rookies in all of baseball, especially in the AL. So I understand, getting the pitching, and, Screwball has got the upside. Tamar Johnson as well, getting an elite spec back. But, I mean, obviously right now Josh Young is easily the best player in the deal. And Dave getting him back, is big. And, I just think he could have platooned Young and Volpe potentially for a little bit, especially in that offense. But at the same time, he needs pitching. He got pitching. So now that I've thought about it some more since the first time we had discussed it, it makes more sense, especially if Screwball can come back and be a dog of any sort because, again, the Larks need some pitching after really bolstering the offense.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Screwball. I think he is, very, very underrated. I think he is a really good player. He just plays for the Tigers. And so, you look at it, was it a high price to pay? Maybe not. But I think for the price, it kind of made perfect sense. Like I said, I know I had been after Screwball for a while. Couldn't get him. I offered Beatty 1-for-1, which I thought was kind of more than enough. I really wasn't I could have went a little higher, but not as much. But like I said, heck, didn't really matter because Braxton came in and hey, he got him, took care of business. So good for him. And like I said, I think he'll be a good piece for Braxton.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, obviously Braxton, we talked about need that pitching depth from those previous moves earlier this week. Gets Tarek Screwball. Josh Young's obviously been good, and he obviously is playing a very good offense, which gives him a lot of opportunities for, RBIs and runs and that sort. I mean, I'm still, I think him, like, Screwball being on the Tigers does worry me a bit because it kind of limits the opportunities for him to get kind of those wins or those longer starts. But, I mean, it's not the worst in the world. I kind of agree with you, Jon Heite, or where I was, like, more, like, apprehensive first, but kind of thinking about it, I'm like, well, he did need pitching and, kind of, I would maybe buying low is, I don't know if that's the right word, but kind of hoping he kind of takes another leap as well. Buying on that early could help out Braxton in the long run if he does end up keeping Screwball. And I know he loves his Tigers, so I assume that also kind of played in a factor into it. And then Tamar Johnson hasn't been amazing this year. Still been solid, but, I think, especially the way he started out A-ball last year, like, went from rookie to A-ball and was dominating A-ball as an 18-year-old coming out of or just freshly drafted. Hasn't been as dominant this season, but that obviously could change, and he's still a very, highly regarded prospect who I also like, so we'll see how this plays out. And John, do you want to? We'll do it straight if you want to talk about it real quick, John. You traded away Andres Munoz for Jason Dominguez, Dalen Lyle, excuse me, and you got your 2025 second pick back. If you want to talk quickly about that, you can.
Yeah, I'll do it for just a second. Munoz is a guy people have been hitting me up about for a while because I've been rocking, 3 really good closers, and Bautista, who's probably the best, closer arguably in baseball right now. Paul Sewald, who was platooning with Munoz, but Sewald's been getting the saves, and also Ryan Presley. I've been going after Jason Dominguez, outside of Volpe, who I had. I have Judge, I have now Cole. Dominguez, outside of Volpe, is the guy I've been trying to get for a very long time, just never could. And originally, I was, kind of dumb, and I turned down this trade when Hamco offered this because I thought, Munoz could easily take over the closer spot by the end of the season. And right now, it's not really looking that way yet. Maybe next year. But for right now, Sewald is still getting his saves. And, Dominguez, I know people are kind of not sold on him. He's actually batting only 200 right now. But, he's the Martian. He's got an incredible amount of upside. And at the worst, I got a top 40 spec for, a closer or a reliever, not even a closer, that wasn't even playing on my team, along with 2 other assets. So I was happy with it, and the Martian is now home in Hartford.
We'll head to sorry, Tita. You can
Go ahead. No, I thought it was a good deal for Height. I actually like Dominguez a lot, so I thought it was a price to pay to play,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously you had relievers to burn. I'm one of those people not sold on Dominguez. Then again, I just love hating on the New York Yankees despite you. But but we'll see how it goes. Last trade we've had for a while, but Smell finally got rid of the white Jordan Walker. Or Conner finally got rid of the white Jordan Walker. Matt Chapman for Tim Anderson, Aiden Curry, G. Wabe. Tita, since you're a big fan of his, I guess Conner, this was your trade. You should go first, and then Tita, you can talk about him.
Yeah, so I have an unhealthy enjoyment of Tim Anderson, just watching him play, and going into the year, I think I had him pretty clearly ahead of Matt Chapman. Obviously, Chapman's had an incredible April and cooled off a little bit the last couple months. So right now I'm a little bit short of third base, but I think getting a quality shortstop that's going to hit leadoff or second on a very talented roster. Ji-Won Bae is a 23-year-old who just hit the injured list, but was getting decent playing time as a utility guy for the Pirates, and then a pitching spec. So I'm pretty happy with the return. I guess I got Chapman in a previous trade with Tita involving Tommy Edman. So just part of the process for continuing to build as many assets as possible for the future.
Tita, if you want to go.
I mean, the white Jordan Walker, it's a sad day that he gets moved, but it made sense for Conner to do it. Like I said, Conner is in asset collection mode. He's not afraid to buy, and he's not afraid to flip. And like I said, you got to respect it if you're a fantasy dynasty guy, and he's trying to do it the right way.
I remember you were talking about Matt Chapman, and I forgot. I must have missed you actually trading him for Tommy Edman, but I forget when we were in the call, but I remember we were just in voice, and you were trying to hype him up to me, and I was completely dying at it. And so, I mean, Tim Anderson, obviously, he's a very talented player. Been kind of having a down year this year. He still has not hit a home run in the past calendar year. I remember someone I saw bet that was they could have won a $70,000 parlay, but they need Tim Anderson to hit a home run, which hasn't happened, and literally hasn't happened all this year. And I don't think it's happened since July of last year. But he's obviously been former batting champion, very good for average. Just he's kind of part of that White Sox being kind of garbage system. But when he's good, he's a very elite shortstop in terms of getting points. But if he can get him on that, and I know Matt Chapman's been kind of similar, just a bit older, so we'll see how this plays out. Very interesting trade for both sides, and we're finally done with the trades. A very exciting beginning of the week. Kind of tapered off the end, but still some noticeable news nonetheless. But I want to really get talking about the previews for this week, and if this week was a UFC fight card, it might be card of the year, or at least contending for it, because we have a lot of heavy hitters. I mean, there's a couple of matchups you can go for matchup of the week, but I think for the narratives and also what's at stake for playoffs, I think I got to give it to the Nashville Sounds versus the Tampa Tarpons. Tita, your arch nemesis. You're looking for the sweep. What are you feeling this week?
We got our brooms out here in Nashville. We're pissed off, Ken. We're pissed off. All right, we got taken to the woodshed by the Clearwater Beach Dogs, and then we get taken to the woodshed by Domingo Herman, and first perfect game in 11 years. And we had a meeting, and a team meeting. I came down from the owner's box, and we're pissed off. And I kept the red receipts from Jamie, basically telling me that I was worthless at the beginning of the year early. Basically, hey, you're not competing. It's my show. Give me all your good players or something. And so, when I smoked him earlier in the year, it was an upset. 1 time's an accident, Hen. 2 times, that means shit's for real. So we're sweeping the Tar Ponds this week, and that is the bold prediction. And I'm dropping the mic.
John, what are your thoughts on this?
This is a tough one, as many of these all are. All right, I've been thinking about it, and Tita's my guy. But I'm looking through this matchup, and I think I picked Tita pretty much every matchup he's been in, outside of maybe against Cody once, or I might even pick him over you, Hen. I just think because Jamie was so bad last week, like for his standards, I'm going to lean Jamie this week for that reason. Even though I think obviously Tita's a much better manager than Jamie is, but I just think that offense, because it was so underperforming this week, I think it's going to have, a 450 to 500 point week. I think some of the arms as well, like I mentioned, that didn't really do that well, like the Miller brothers, or at least Bobby Miller, who will be pitching. Nola only had like 10. So I'm going to lean Tampa just once, Tita, even though you're my guy and I usually pick you. But I just, a team like Jamie, if it's that bad for a week like he had, usually the week after they explode, and it's happened like every time so far this year. So just for this week, I'll root for Tampa, but I will not be surprised if Tita takes out the brooms and sweeps the Tar Puns into the closet.
Connor?
Fantrax has this as a Tampa win by 30 or 40 points. I think Tita is clearly going to get the sweep, even if there might be an initial down lead, or if Tita's initially down, he's going to make the moves to win this, just because this is a very important matchup. And with Jaime's team, there's been some inconsistencies on being proactive and not reacting to injuries or like depth issues that are called out week over week. And then Tita just has older pitching that you're going to get out of. Bobby Miller had 3 or 4 great starts and then got lit up by the Astros. Who knows if that's going to happen again? So I think because of the consistency and what we know the drive is to win this, I think the Sounds are going to get the sweep.
Tita, get out the brooms. The Sounds are sweeping. Sir. I'm calling a sweep on Jamie. I'm looking at this right now. This is my thinking. I agree with you, Jon Heite. Jamie's team, a lot of their offense underperformed, but I'll tell you this. He got 107 points from Ronald Acuna. If that tapers down to like 70, 80, still a good week. But if that tapers down to 70, 80, it kind of compensates for some of the other offensive players who might bounce back, so that kind of margin between his offensive scoring isn't going to be as much as maybe we might anticipate. Also, I'm looking at this right now. First of all, Sandy's playing against the Phillies. Phillies always rock up Sandy. I know he stinks to begin with, but that's just some of my notes. Also, Aaron Nola plays Zach Eflin in a revenge game. That's a loss of brewing if I've ever heard one. Whether or not he gets no run support or he just stinks. But I think those are 2 big pitching matchups that are not favoring Jamie, and I think Tita's due. I think he's due. Like he said, he got taken to the barn by me, which, no offense, I'm sorry, Tita. And then he got fucked over. He got fucked over by the wife beater, Domingo home run. I think this is Tita's week. He convincingly drops like 750 plus. It's gonna be a close game, but I think Tita, the Sounds are gonna be back at it. They did a little retool. I saw Tita. That was the thing. Tita hadn't been trading a lot recently, which I don't know if it was teams were scared of trading with him or he felt his team was in a comfortable position. But he was doing a little wheeling and dealing. He readjusted a bit. I think his team is now back is recalibrated. He's gonna get clicking. I don't think he's gonna get fucked over by any stupid events, and I think he's gonna win.
That's the key. Cannot get fucked over by any stupid events. That's the key to the whole thing.
It is the key. And it will be an interesting week. And if this was the main event, I'll say this matchup, maybe this is the co-main event if we're keeping the UFC analogy. I could be wrong, but I think this is more narratives driven than actual team driven. But I'm gonna go the Hartford Yard Goats versus the Bismarck Larks next matchup. Jon Heite, obviously we're all real close in real life. We joined through Bracton. We badger on him a lot. So I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, first and foremost, circled this on the calendar when the beginning of the year before everything went down. I think it was 2 weeks ago, we took the Larks to the shed and shot him in the head, dropped 250. Actually, we won by 250 against the Larks. I'm going to say this first of all about Bracton's team. His offense is a lot better from the last time I played him. I'm not arguing that. But if this was a week ago when he had the pitching, I would be like, okay, this is really going to be, I'm a little bit worried. I still am a little worried because anything can happen against Bracton. I'm sure Volpe's going to drop 80 on my fucking dome this week, just knowing my luck. And Vlad as well, who I continually crap on every week. But I love my pitching so much more than his. Shane Bieber's going against the Braves, this week. So yes. He's gonna get up like 10 runs and get yanked in the third inning. Can't wait for that. I'm obviously gonna pick myself. I think his offense might keep up with mine just for the sole fact my offense was like so good this week, and similar to the Jamie logic, is my offense is gonna regress at least for this week. It's happened before when I've dropped 900 plus points in a week. So I think my offense is not going to be as good as it was last week by far. But, I got Rodon potentially back on the bump this week. Erod's going up against the A's. He's back. Old guys apparently suck to him, but give me my old arms all day. Tita knows it. These guys are dogs. These guys are consistent. And I'm going to take them all day over the baby Larks.
Conner? Oh, Conner?
Yeah, so I think this is going to be a clear win for Height. The pitching's just so much better, and a lot of these teams, I think, make sure that their best pitchers start on Sunday to avoid maybe pitching in the All-Star game. So I think there's going to be a big push for starts then. So I could definitely see a scenario where this is a close matchup until like Wednesday or Thursday, and then once more starts bunch into the weekend, the yard goats will pull away. So we'll continue to see the 2007 Patriots keep at it.
Let's go, 2007 Patriots. I love that, Connor. Tita, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
This is the nursing home versus the college frat house game. It's the old guys versus the young guys. It's the four Matt Olsons versus Ellie. I just think at the end of the day, I'm gonna say Height's gonna drop about 875. He's going to beat Bracton by 300-plus points.
Yeah, it's interesting to look. I don't know if you set your lineup, but Bracton right now has 9 batters on you, and he has a starting pitcher. I assume you'll compensate for some way, whether you're picking up guys midweek or maybe you add a starter at the end of the week. But that is.
I haven't set my bats yet. I have like 3 guys in contention for the last start, so I will have 12.
Okay, so. I assume that won't be worried. That was something I just noticed looking at the preview. But obviously, this is a very narrative-driven matchup. I assume for a lot of people in this league, this week is the World Series for them. Whenever you play Jon Heite, Bismarck is very motivated. A lot of guys who are proving them who have to prove their worth. A lot of narratives potentially at stake here. I think it'd be funny if Bracton wins this matchup. One, I could also just perpetuate the Panthers 15-1 rumor or 15-1 narrative.
And watch it happen. Honestly, I'm going to say this. Like, if there's a week for me to lose, I don't give a fuck who's on his team. It's going to be against him because that's the way the universe works. Obviously, I won the first time, so it's not as bad if I lose. But the way things are, the narratives behind this. Like, I could go 15-1 and win the whole thing, but then, if I lose this, he's going to constantly say this for the next 2 years, even though I beat him already. So that's just the reality of it, honestly.
Yeah, I think it'd be funny. Unless you play me, I will not pick against you, Jon Heite. So I will stick at it. You'll win. You're not going to score 1,000 points, which that makes sense. But I think even if you get to like low to mid 800s, I don't see an avenue where you lose. So I think you're going to win. It would be hilarious if Bracton beats you, but I just don't think that's going to happen. So next matchup, the next real big playoff contender matchup I want to look at is myself, the Clearwater Beach Dogs, versus the Norfolk Tide. I'll start things off because this is my matchup. Look, Paul is a very good team. He even when he was quote unquote rebuilding, he was making these shrewd moves to kind of get back at it. But this is an interesting stat I actually noticed, and I wanted to wait to point this out. Paul is 1-6 against the division this year, which, if for those people who keep track at home, me and Paul are in the same division. Now, obviously, going into this kind of stretch, I played Tito, Bry, and I think I played Paul too in the next 3 weeks. So obviously, this is a big stretch for me. Really, kind of solidify my playoff spot. I already won the first two, and if I can get these games against Paul, that would also be very nice. But my team has been consistently scoring. After kind of an up and down, beginning of the year, my team has been consistently scoring in the high 700, low 800s, which has been able to keep up with basically every team not named Jon Heite and I guess Smell last week because of Domingo Herman. I think if I can keep that up, I'm confident beating Paul. I think Paul scored, what did he score? 730 in the 730s last week? Actually, I could probably just check myself. But he scored that.
I want to say it's like 7, he's a little bit less than me.
Okay. I have some, I'm slotted for 11 starts because I already set my lineup. So I'll probably, if it gets real close, I might buy an arm or find someone on the waiver wire later in the week. I know Mitch Keller has 2 starts this week. Spencer Strider has a start against the Rays, which will be interesting. So we'll see how he does with that. I have to check to see who Andrew Abbott pitches against. But, obviously I'm confident in my team. I'm always going to pick my team. Even if my team sucks, I always pick my team because that's who I am. But it's going to be a tough matchup. There's a lot narratives at stake here, but I think I'm going to go myself. I think it's going to be within 100, 150 points, though. Jon Heite or Tita, if you want to go, or Connor, I guess you guys.
Yeah. I'll say for this week, I love Paul's team. I just said how much I love Paul's team, even if he's down on it sometimes. There's so many good pieces, and, the pitching's gotten better. But similar to you, Hen, I'm not picking against you unless you're facing me. And, the way your team's been playing, I'm not. So I'm going to take the Beach Dogs. But I do think it is going to be within 150 points, like within that amount by the end of the week. But getting Strider, already adding to your good pitching staff, it's now great adding Strider. So give me the Beach Dogs all day right now.
Tita?
I look at it where it is kind of like I said, on any given week, Paul can be just as good as anybody. I think for this week, I think it'll be close, especially listening to Hen talk about, he's got a lot of starts later on in the week. Usually when that happens, the other guy usually has like 10 during the first 3 days, and it ends up kind of putting you in a catch-up mode if it goes bad for you. I think it'll be close for a little while. I think Hen will pull away at the end, last couple of days. But like I said, it would not surprise me in the least if Paul has a lead late in the week. But I just think Hen's team's too much.
Connor, you can go.
Yeah, I just think Hen's pitching is way too good. And another factor, I think Paul is currently on vacation. So this is, given that Hen's just on tear, this is the perfect time for Paul to pull something out of Euro trip or whatever his plans may be. But assuming that Height wipes the floor with Bracton and Hen does well against Paul, I'm going to be really curious as to what moves both those teams make to solidify those last roster spots. And Paul's team does have the talent to pull off the upset, but I do think Hen's going to win by 150 points.
Yeah, Tito, like you were saying, we talked about this before because I was saying my lineup. I think I have 4 starts from Monday through Thursday, and then I have the remaining 7 starts from Friday to Sunday, which could potentially screw me over, but I think my bats can maybe keep up with Paul depending on how many starts he has. I don't think he said his lineup yet, but we'll see. I'm confident in my team, as I always am. So, the match I want to talk about next is a little bit of a tank bowl. We haven't had these in a couple of weeks, but this is a big tank bowl I want to talk about. The Richmond Flying Squirrels against the Oklahoma City Dodgers. I believe this is... Yes, it is the... So, Scott is 4-9. Chad sitting comfortably at 2-11. But, obviously with a win, it can affect some things in the standings. So these tank bowls are always important. Tita, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
One team I think wants to win. The other team I doesn't think wants to win. So I think it's one team will win. That was kind of a Confucius lesson in baseball right there. So I'm going to go with Chad. I just think Chad has the better team. That is, you never know who might get traded. But I think where things sit on Sunday night, the Mexican tells me Oklahoma City by 200 points.
Oh, my God. We almost went a whole pod without bringing that up again.
Uh-huh.
That would have been a shame. But I'll agree with you, Tita. I'll lean Chad. I'm a big Mickey Moniak resurgent enjoyer right now. He's been tearing the cover off the ball with the Angels. And I'm going to take the team with Mickey Moniak because he's been great. Even though I do think this will be closer, Fantrax has it, I think, as Chad winning by like 14 points. It won't be the most highest scoring week, but I'll lean the Dodgers, and it won't really matter because he's got all the picks anyway.
Connor?
It'll be the Dodgers, but I think the reaction for Chad's going to be the same whether he wins or loses because he's going to get every single prospect he wants.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what happens in this game, Chad has both picks. So if he wins, he wins. If he loses, he wins. Kind of a wild event. But if I had to pick one, I just think Chad's team has been consistently outproducing Scott's team more recently. Obviously he almost beat Hamko almost played Jamie, but Chad, obviously put up a decent amount of points this week. Scott struggled to get the start minimum, and obviously both these teams are trying to tank, but I think just Chad has a lot more to work with. He can kind of still win some of these games because he has so much draft capital to work with, and I think he'll take the win on this one. Although, wouldn't be shocked if Scott obviously isn't really playing to lose because he doesn't have his pick. But going up next, we have, if I can find it, we'll talk about a man on the pod as Connor is currently taking on, I believe, my laptop's not loading, so Connor, I believe you're taking on the Rocky Mountain Vibes, although I do want to double check that before I misspeak.
He is.
He is, yes. My laptop finally loads. So, Connor takes on Bry. Connor, I will let you have the floor and let you give your thoughts.
I mean, I think Bry wiped the floor with me 3 weeks ago, and he might do so again. I have played Jaime and a couple other teams surprisingly close. Bracton won by about 200 points with clearly a better roster, so I like to think I'll keep the competitive spirit and try to make moves to put my team in a good position to win both this week and, most importantly, going forward. But, I mean, Bry just has the star power that he might be able to take the week off, and if he doesn't stream relievers, still beat me pretty comfortably.
I guess I'll go for this prediction. Like Connor said, I think at the end of this week, I don't think it really matters because he's going to acquire, I think, a lot of good assets that are going to help his team long term. I think that's what's most important on his mind right now for the outlook of this team. At the same time, a couple of guys like Willie Adames, I know we traded for recently. Tim Anderson finally broke the home run streak, so he could get hot. I think he's going to have a pretty good showing offensively, but Bry, kind of had a down week for his standards. I think Bry will win, and his team will bounce back. Just, again, when your team's that good and you have a bad week, you're definitely prone to just having a much better one the week after. So I'll take the vibes for this one.
I am going to say that this is my upset pick of the week. I'm going to pick the Sod Poodles in a upset on Sunday. I think Sunday's going to be the day. I think Bry's got a lot of pieces. I think Bry should be buying a little more. And instead of trying to come after pitchers for two injured pitchers, healthy pitchers for injured pitchers. And I just think he could do a lot more to shore up that outfield. His arms are really, really good. Best arms in the league. The amount of arms that he does have. I just think his bats are going to end up biting him this week, and I think the Sod Poodles are coming, and they're going to have a good week. I think Conner's due. He's going to make some moves to help him, and it's showtime for the Sod Poodles. We're going to take them to the kennel.
Nice, Tita. See, I agree with you on the part about Bry where I think he needs to kind of pick a direction where he either needs to maybe buy more or maybe sell to where, maybe he'll still make the playoffs, but maybe some of his older guys or some of his more win-now players who, have a couple of years left, he sells off some picks or prospects, but I think he needs to pick a direction either way. I think he's been really struggling recently, but especially last week, he still was in the mid-600s. So I think if he puts up a similar performance this week, I think he will beat Conner. So I think I'm going to go with that. Bry has been struggling, but I think he has enough star power and talent, and I think he's a shrewd enough of a manager to where he'll always hover around that 600 range, which I think will be enough this week. So, got a couple more matchups to talk about before we wrap up today's episode. We're gonna head over to El Paso where the Chihuahuas will take on the Kannapolis Cannonballers. I mentioned this is a very underrated matchup here because of all the middle playoff teams playing this week. If Smell takes the win, he's a game within Hall or Bracton, or I think Bry will be a game and a half back, depending on how that matchup goes. So if he wins here and some of these other, just based on matchups, some of the other teams will lose, Smell can actually get in the playoffs, and Homko, obviously we know what his pedigree has been. What do you guys think this matchup is going to look like?
I'm going to go with the Chihuahuas. The Chihuahuas are hot. They had a historic week this week against the Sounds. Numerous players just busting out the seams with guys that they haven't seen in months. I think Smell's going to buy a little bit. I think he kind of sniffing the playoffs. He's got that the Chihuahuas are smelling it, and so I think he's going to make some more moves to buy. I think Humco is just, when he gets his bats, sometimes when his bats are struggling, his arms are doing well. When his arms aren't doing well, his bats are surging. And it's hard to get them both clicking at the same time. He did against me, and we ended up tying. But I just think this week the Chihuahuas will be a little bit too much for the Cannonballers.
I basically was thinking that exact same thing as you, Tita, that I do like Honko's offense a lot better, the way they've been playing. But I think they're two teams in different directions right now. I think Smell is going to buy a little bit. He's not going to score 900 points again unless, Domingo Germán decides to do another a nice little perfect game or no-hitter, which is not going to happen. But I think, with the way the two teams are going, Smell is going to buy, especially try to catch that spot. And Homko has repeatedly put guys like Gleyber Torres, Nathaniel Lau, Brandon Nimmo on the block. Would not be surprised one of those, if not multiple of those dudes move this week. So I'll take Smell, even though on paper I still like Homko's offense a little bit better right now.
Yeah, I think with Smell buying and Homko probably more moving in a selling direction, I think that this is going to be a Chihuahua win, but I do want to see if Homko's offense can keep repeating the 350, 400-point performances that will get him the assets to continue moving forward for a potential playoff run in the next year or two.
I'm actually going against the grain. Smell, obviously, has been rattling off some wins. He's in position to be in position. But when you have a historic week like Smell did, where you have a perfect game, usually the law of averages balances itself out. Now I'm going to take Homko this week. I agree, he might sell off some pieces, but Homko was very smart too. He obviously he's trying to build up some prospects, but he'll maybe even buy a major leaguer who, someone may be lower on, and then he does well for him. I think his pitching's going to bounce back. I don't think Yuri Perez is going to, drop negative 20 again. I think he'll have a much better week this week. He's slated to pitch against the Cardinals. Obviously they have some good offensive players, but overall the team has been kind of trash, and I think his relievers will help out as well. But I think Homko is gonna get low 600s, high 500s. Smell, obviously he had that big week, but I think he's not gonna get Domingo Germán perfect game. I think he, I know he's slated to start 2 weeks, but I think he's gonna kind of show more of what we saw previously, where he's kind of, inconsistent. And when you have a high like that, the low is going to be kind of low. So I'm going to take Homko. It's going to be a close game, but I think he's going to pull out and get win number 3 here. So the final matchup of the week, we have our commish, the Bowling Green Hot Rods, taking on the Rochester Red Wings. Connor, I'll start with you. What are you thinking of this matchup?
I don't think this is going to be close. Dave had maybe the upset of the year, or not counting a perfect game, Dave had the upset of the year with Cody last time, and Cody's not going to allow a sweep, and I think Dave would be completely fine if he sold even more assets off to help not facilitate that directly, but at least get him more assets for the future. So I think the commish is going to show who's king around here and flip the Red Wings.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be too close. I think, earlier in the year, Dave had an epic upset. It's two teams going in two different directions. I just think the Hot Rods are just way too much for the Red Wings.
The Hot Rods surely remember what happened earlier in the season. I think they're going to use that as some motivation. And especially after a somewhat down week for Cody standards, I think they're going to just wake the hell up and drop at least 20 plus this week against Dave, who I think is also going to have a good showing. The offensive piece is there, but he's looking to sell some of these guys for some youth. Give me the Hot Rods by quite a large amount.
Jon Heite's basically stealing the words out of my mouth. I think the Hot Rods understand. They realize what happened last time. They've had this game circled on their calendar. They want revenge, and revenge is served best sweet. And Cody's getting a nice sweet victory. Game will be a wraps by Wednesday, I believe. Cody will drop at least 800 points, and he'll cruise to a very much necessary bounce back week. Before we wrap up tonight's episode, guys, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm going to go first here, Hen. So, for all of you those wondering at home, you might wonder, what is a lark? Bracton is a Bismarck lark, a very fun minor league team. So a lark is a small ground-dwelling songbird, typically with brown streaky plumage, a crest and elongated hind claws, and with a song that is delivered in flight. So this is what's going to happen. So 2 weeks ago, the Larks met the Yargoats. I won by 250, but the Larks got a little bit stronger. They bulked up a little bit, got the offense going, but they're very young. They're able to move fast. They can fly effectively, but they're going to run into a nice little big field here with a bunch of old, 55 and older yard goats that all they do is kick and flail and just drop kick anyone that comes in their way. And leading them is a shepherd, a 28-year-old shepherd who is a 6'4", 200-pound man named Shohei Ohtani, who's going to lead the Yard Goats to another victory, because despite popular belief, oldies aren't a bad thing. And even though, youth is fun, youth is cool, I think Bracton's got a bright future ahead. But I'm taking the 6'4", 210-pound behemoth that is Shohei Ohtani and the Yard Goats, who will drop kick anyone in their way.
It's going to be tough to even. How do you top that?
All right, I had in the bank for a while.
Oh, I think it's amazing. I look at it for this week. A lot of good matchups. Like I said, looking at my matchup, I just think my team's better than Jamie's. Jamie has the star power. I just have a bunch of just guys that just know their roles. And like I said, we've took it on the chin the last couple of weeks. So the Sounds are going to be ready to show people that we're not pretenders, that we're contenders. The brooms are ready. We got the champagne on ice, and it'll be showtime in Music City here this week.
John, I can't believe you looked up the anatomy of a lark for this.
I had to. I'm sorry.
But yeah, gonna be a very exciting week. Gonna be dominated, I feel like, by the matchups. I'm curious to see what the trades look like. I feel like we're gonna get a lot more trades maybe in the back half of this week, where teams, if they're gonna lose the matchup or they feel like they're losing or need to win, will buy or sell more accordingly. But I think we're gonna get a quiet trade from maybe first couple of days, and then once like Wednesday, Thursday starts rolling around, I think we're gonna see some activity. But I think it's gonna be a fun week. Connor, you got any last things to say before we wrap this up?
I think the burger or hot dog I have on Tuesday is going to be a whole lot more appealing than this matchup. But, poodles, I'm pretty sure breed pretty quickly. And so trying to increase my numbers and get as many assets as possible. I think right after this podcast, we're going to see a trade done pretty soon that I hope to flip for more things. But, the future is bright in Amarillo after some hard times, and hopefully we keep on rolling, even though that's not in the win column.
A little surprise for some of the viewers back at home, but that'll do it for this week's episode, week 13 of the Base on Balls podcast here at the Johnny Lee Memorial League. If you are listening, thank you for listening. Hope you have a nice 4th of July. Take care. We're going to have some fun. We're going to be back here again this time next week to discuss this week's episodes, trades, and the next week's episodes after that. But next week's games after that. But I've been Hendog, joined alongside Connor, Jon Heite, and Tita. Have a nice rest of your day. Take care. And we'll see you next time.